such an item. Is this effective across all species? Gushi inquired. Sea Wraith replied candidly. Certainly not, but it can obscure detection for those with psychic levels below SS. The response was measured. Had it claimed to block all psychics? Gushi would have been skeptical, given the pendant's mere 10 gold coin price. After all, expecting such a modest item to thwart SS level or higher abilities would be sheer fantasy. Moreover, as a common commodity, its widespread use would work to her advantage, ensuring she blended in rather than stood out. Without hesitation, Gushi made her decision. Very well, I'll take the pendant. Are there others? Sea Wraith, delighted by the guest's prompt and generous purchase, eagerly proceeded to introduce another item. Pointing to the tablet, Sea Wraith indicated. This is the illusion bracelet, designed to conceal the wearer's race. After explaining, Sea Wraith cast a thoughtful glance at Gushi. As you're aware, esteemed guest, the abduction of slaves among deep-sea races has become rampant these days. It would be disastrous to be captured unwittingly. Gushi was well acquainted with the practice of enslaving other races, but expressed curiosity. Don't you ensure the safety of your guests? Sea Wraith clarified. We guarantee security within the venue, but what rival deep-sea factions might do after encountering each other here is beyond our control. Nodding in understanding, Gushi pointed to the illusion bracelet and inquired further. How popular is this item? Sea Wraith answered truthfully. Nearly every auction attendee purchases one. This revelation took Gushi by surprise, prompting her to inquire further. Could it possibly outsell the mist pendant? The Sea Wraith replied, indeed. For every deep-sea race has its adversaries, and all must remain vigilant. Hearing this, Gushi grew curious about the Sea Wraith's own foes and asked, then, who are the enemies of the Sea Wraiths? The question plunged the Sea Wraith into a momentary silence. Lasting several seconds before it finally spoke, Sea Wraiths have no enemies. Internally, Gushi scoffed, doubting the claim. Why the hesitation if it were truly so? Yet, she gleaned at least one insight. The intertribal dynamics among the deep-sea races were intricate, and every bit of knowledge about them could enhance humanity's chances of survival in this world. Amid their lengthy exchange, time slipped away unnoticed, culminating in Gushi spending 40 gold coins to purchase both the mist pendant and the shifting bracelet. Thrilled by the profit made even before the auction commenced, the Sea Wraith was reluctant to part ways, lingering until it escorted Gushi to the venue. Chapter 175. Is the auction hall safe? Although Gushi had gathered some information from the Sea Wraith, as a first-time attendee, she remained cautious upon entering the hall. As the Sea Wraith opened the door, she anticipated stepping into a grand entrance, but instead found herself transported from one space to another. Upon entering the new area, she was greeted by the voice of another Sea Wraith attendant. Welcome, esteemed guest, to the auction. For your safety, please remain discreetly within your room. The spatial shift signified a change in the Sea Wraith's duties. Here, their role was to assist bidders during the event. Gushi expressed her gratitude for the reminder. To ensure security, though she couldn't venture out, she assumed observing through the window would be permissible. Approaching the window, she half expected the Sea Wraith to intervene, but it showed no reaction, not even a hint of curiosity. With the auction minutes away, the outer hall lay deserted, devoid of any deep-sea beings, which left Gushi somewhat disappointed. She had hoped to observe other races and broaden her horizons, yet there was nothing to see. Sensing her discontent, the Sea Wraith promptly inquired, "Is there anything the guest requires?" Gushi responded, "This is my first auction, and the bracelet and necklace you recommended seem rather unnecessary." She deliberately displayed the items, swaying them before the Sea Wraith like a disgruntled customer feeling deceived. For the Sea Wraith, questioning their commercial integrity was unacceptable, and it swiftly defended, "You need not worry, esteemed guest. Our measures are solely for your shopping safety." Suddenly, a deafening crash erupted from the outer hall, abruptly cutting off the Sea Wraith's explanation. Gushi could no longer bear to listen to its incessant chatter. She hurried to the window, pressing herself against it to peer outside. Immediately afterward, the announcement from the Sea Wraith echoed through the hall. Urgent notice, urgent notice. Esteemed guests, please refrain from moving about. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the auction will be postponed by 30 minutes. We sincerely apologize for any inconvenience caused. The message repeated 3 times. And combined with the commotion in the hall, it was clear that the auction's delay stemmed from the unexpected turmoil within. Although the Sea Wraith had implemented emergency measures, the tension in the hall showed no signs of abating. Two deep-sea clans of distinct races now stood in a tense standoff. A sea wraith attendant drifted over to Gu Shi and explained, "The one on the left is from the Manatee clan, and the one on the right is from the Seahorse clan. Their relationship has long been strained, and today they've crossed paths at the auction." Gu Shi turned to glance at the sea wraith, surprised by its impromptu commentary, and instinctively inquired, "Is this narration complimentary?" No sooner had she spoken than the sea wraith produced a service price list and handed it to her. "Esteemed guest, here is our detailed service menu." At that moment, Gu Shi felt an urge to reprimand herself for broaching the topic of money with the sea wraith. As the two deep-sea clans outside seemed on the verge of conflict, the sea wraith seized the opportunity to promote its services, shedding its earlier reticence. "Esteemed guest, they're about to engage in combat. You must decide swiftly," it urged. Gu Shi cast a deep, scrutinizing look at the sea wraith before examining the list. She discovered a range of services, including but not limited to hazard assessment, on-site security provisions, and avoidance of hostile clans. Naturally, combat commentary was among them. This service was priced according to the combatant's prowess, adhering to the principle of value for money. Perusing the list left Gu Shi somewhat exasperated. Noticing that the Manatee and Seahorse clans had yet to commence fighting, she couldn't help but ask, "Why haven't they started?" The sea wraith replied with utmost seriousness, "In accordance with our clan's regulations. Any group causing disturbances in the auction hall must observe a 58-minute cooling-off period to avoid being blacklisted by the sea wraith." Had Gu Shi been unaware of the sea wraith's array of conflict-related services, she might have believed this facade of customer consideration. Nevertheless, recognizing this as a rare chance to witness the abilities of other deep-sea clans, she resolved to part with a small sum. "How much for the combat commentary?" she inquired. Upon hearing a potential transaction, the sea wraith's voice brightened with delight. Both the Manatee and Seahorse clans possess a level psychic power, but given their long-standing enmity, any altercation could be highly destructive. To maintain the venue's operations, the sea wraith incurs significant expenses. Gu Shi felt a vain throb on her forehead, interpreting its lengthy explanation as a ploy to inflate the price. "Enough, just tell me the cost." 100 silver coins. Gu Shi inwardly scoffed, thinking it would be exorbitantly expensive, only to find that, after all the talk, it was merely 100 silver coins. Observing the sea wraith's earlier demeanor, she had assumed it would cost dozens or even hundreds of gold coins. She let out a sigh and handed over the sea trust card. The sea wraith immediately understood, producing a card reader to process the payment. After the transaction, the sea wraith kindly cautioned her that such occurrences were common at auctions and advised her to remain vigilant. As she muttered to herself, Gu Shi noticed the two deep-sea creatures outside had not yet begun their confrontation. Just as she feared her money had been wasted, they finally sprang into action. The sea wraith explained, "The Sea Ox tribe possesses immense strength and excels with heavy weaponry, while the Seahorse tribe boasts remarkable speed and proficiency with light arms. On the surface, the Seahorse tribe seems advantaged, but the Sea Ox's superior attack and defense capabilities make their endurance far beyond comparison." Gu Shi listened to the commentary while observing the scene unfold. True to the sea wraith's words, the Seahorse tribe launched rapid assaults, landing 7 hits in 10 exchanges, whereas the Sea Ox managed only 3. However, due to the latter's powerful strikes, both sides sustained comparable injuries. The sea wraith continued, with their fundamental attributes balanced. Prolonging the fight yields no benefit, so they will soon unleash their psychic abilities. The Sea Ox tribe wields 2 such skills. One is the heavy shield, offering formidable defense that can withstand attacks from opponents 2 levels higher with considerable effort. The other is the heavy hammer, delivering a devastating concussive effect. No sooner had the sea wraith spoken than the Sea Ox outside executed the heavy hammer, aiming to shatter the Seahorse. In response, the Seahorse swiftly retreated and activated its own psychic skill. The sea wraith noted, "This is the Seahorse's roar, generating intense psychic waves fused with their vocalizations, resulting in high destructive potential." Though both attacks were formidable, they collided and neutralized each other, leaving both creatures panting heavily. Gu Shi pointed at them and inquired, "So, how long will this continue?" The sea wraith replied, "It won't be much longer. Apologies for the delayed update today. My keyboard malfunctioned, and I had to purchase a new one upon returning home." Chapter 176. 3 Transactions. Life and death duel. Gu Shi could tell that the sea wraith had repeated these explanations countless times. as it not only identified the deep-sea creature skills with precision, but also understood their combat patterns thoroughly. It was likely their extensive knowledge that deterred other tribes from provoking them. Here it comes. The sea wraith alerted, and Gushi immediately turned her gaze. She saw the sea ox lower its head, baring its horns, and dig its hooves into the ground, while the seahorse reared up with a piercing whinny before kicking its hind legs. The two deep-sea beings charged at each other, unleashing an overwhelming force. The resulting shockwave rattled the building, only to cease abruptly as a flash of light enveloped the area. What is this? Gushi was astonished by the sheer impact. If such force were unleashed in a sea battle, it would likely send waves soaring dozens of meters high. Indeed, despite the deep-sea clan's smaller stature compared to sea beasts, their destructive power in combat was no less formidable. The sea wraith explained, "This is a spiritual defense artifact. As esteemed guests of the sea wraith, it is our duty to protect others from disturbances." Gushi felt somewhat exasperated by its constant efforts to promote business for the sea wraith. Had the two deep-sea clan members outside not been knocked unconscious from the final collision, it probably would have offered even more services for sale. The sea wraith added, "Esteemed guest, there is no need for concern. Although they sustained some injuries, our medical team is highly professional. For a modest fee, they can be fully treated, ensuring that during your retreat, you won't have to worry about ambushes from hostile factions or being captured as slaves." Gushi couldn't help but think that the nature of the greedy tome must have been influenced by prolonged exposure to the sea wraith. Truly, there was no business it wouldn't pursue. Observing their familiarity with the creature's abilities, Gushi casually inquired, "Given your deep understanding of their skills, do you perhaps host some sort of arena or competitions?" To her surprise, the sea wraith promptly produced another invitation. At this point, she understood perfectly. It was a blatant attempt to attract more business, a clever advertisement indeed. However, as an excellent opportunity to gauge the strengths of various deep-sea clans. She had no intention of passing it up. Thus, Gushi accepted the crimson invitation and continued listening to the sea wraith's introduction. The sea wraith elaborated. "Our clan engages in 3 types of ventures. The first is the phantom ship at sea. Given the vastness of the ocean, encountering drifting clans depends on fortune. The second is an auction house specializing in the sale of diverse items. Through the second venture, we select qualified guests to partake in the third, the life and death arena." The life and death arena, it explained, was a voluntary participation event centered on wagering treasures. In essence, if one customer offers a treasure and another desires it, a life and death contract is formed between them. This ruthless rule caused Gushi to frown involuntarily. She asked, "To remain here, must every customer participate?" The sea wraith clarified, "No. Only those who receive an invitation are eligible to enter the game of life and death. Whether you personally compete or place bets on others' matches is not strictly mandated. Further details can be accessed within the invitation's spatial realm." Though the sea wraith offered no additional explanations, Gushi could infer the gist. Gazing at its impassive demeanor, she couldn't resist asking, "Why do you consider me a potential client?" The response came easily. Generally, those who purchase explanatory services possess a fierce combat drive and intense desires. They yearn to learn more about the deep-sea clan's battles and to grow stronger. The sea wraith's chaotic, hollow eyes fixed on Gushi, sending a chill down her spine as if it were interrogating her very soul. Reluctant as she was to admit it, she had to concede that the sea wraith had guessed correctly. She deeply craved more information about the deep-sea clan, especially regarding their combat prowess. For no apparent reason, Gushi felt a surge of restlessness within her. She realized that the sea wraith before her was on an entirely different level from the 3 she had encountered before. A sea wraith entrusted with security duties at an auction house undoubtedly possessed formidable mental strength and combat prowess, far surpassing the 2 outside. Conservatively estimating, its mental power had to be at least S rank, and very likely even SS rank. The sea wraith seemed to perceive Gushi's agitation and wisely knew when to withdraw. "Honored guest, the commotion has concluded. The auction is about to commence." Gushi composed herself, nodded in acknowledgement, and returned to her seat. Now was not the time for idle thoughts. Her primary objective was to secure the pearl fish and proceed with the construction of the future. The pearl fish was not considered a high-priced item, and Gushi successfully acquired it for 8 gold coins. After completing the transaction, she received a spherical object resembling a glass orb. The sea wraith explained, "This is a unique artifact of our kind. Inside the orb lies a specialized space. Simply shatter it to release the pearl fish. Gushi nodded, a wave of relief washing over her. Although the pearl fish was not as massive as some sea creature she had seen, its size was still considerable. Transporting it would have posed a significant inconvenience. Apart from the initial disturbance, the remainder of the auction proceeded smoothly. As she prepared to depart, a question suddenly crossed Gushi's mind. She gently touched the two ornaments adorning her attire and inquired, "Can these items be used outside?" The sea wraith replied confidently, "Of course." The craftsmanship of the sea wraiths is unparalleled. Noticing its inclination to boast, Gushi swiftly changed the subject. "I would like to purchase several more sets. Is that possible?" Upon hearing this, the sea wraith visibly levitated with excitement. Given that these ornaments were far more expensive than the pearl fish, the prospect of additional sales was undoubtedly thrilling. After hovering in place for 3 full circles, it settled down and produced a tablet. Gushi had assumed she would need to return to the waiting area. But to her surprise, the sea wraith presented the items on the spot. Assured of their functionality beyond the auction, Gushi did not hesitate to place an order for 10 sets of jewelry, spending a total of 400 gold coins in one go. The swift expenditure delighted the sea wraith, prompting it to spin joyfully 3 more times. By the time she returned to her ship, it was already 7 in the evening. Her first task was to release and care for the pearl fish. She tossed the glass orb into the air, and with a powerful strike from the octopus, it shattered instantly. A 4-meter-long pearl fish emerged, thrashing about on the ocean surface. Perhaps due to its prior captivity, a ring pierced its tail, and it let out pitiful cries. Desperate to escape, the fish struggled fiercely, but whenever it attempted to flee, the ring on its tail glowed, draining its energy. Sensing its plight, the octopus and other sea creatures surfaced, circling the pearl fish in a concerted effort to remove the restraining ring. Observing the large fish circling the smaller ones and causing injuries to their tails, Gushi promptly intervened to halt their actions. Stop. Let's first provide it with fish feed to help it recover. I will handle the matter of the ring," she declared. With the fish owner's command, the aquatic creatures gradually calmed down. Chapter 177. Unlocking the tail ring. Information revealed having acquired the pearl fish, Gushi noted the ring pierced through its tail, intended to enforce obedience, a method she deemed entirely unnecessary. She instructed the octopus to fetch the fish feed and administer it to the pearl fish. Perhaps due to their shared nature as sea creatures, the pearl fish showed no resistance to the octopus's feeding gestures. Pack after pack of fish feed was poured into the pearl fish's mouth until, upon the 20th packet, the aquaculture system signaled the onset of domestication. The pearl fish, now in this tamed phase, ceased its defiance. Guided by the octopus and other sea beings, the fish were gently ushered toward Gushi. After some maneuvering, the pearl fish presented its tail to her, awaiting her inspection in serene stillness. With the pearl fish and its companions no longer thrashing about, Gushi could clearly examine the tail ring. Her initial fleeting glance had led her to assume it was akin to a bracelet in size. In reality, the ring surpassed the dimensions of her head. Crafted from what appeared to be a metallic material, it was seamless and monolithic, with no visible joints, leaving its method of attachment a mystery. Additionally, the tail ring bore a serial number, likely a product identifier for record-keeping purposes. Gushi extended her hand, lightly touching the ring, then enveloped it with her psychic energy. Suddenly, she distinctly sensed another layer of psychic force coating the ring. Subsequently, she witnessed the psychic energy coalescing into contractual text. The Taokon were numerous, detailing not only the usage of the tail ring, but also its authority protocols. By merely overlaying the ring with her psychic power, Gushi could transfer its control to herself. Of course, the tail ring served solely to dominate the fish. Should her catch be seized by others or deep-sea races, a renewed psychic overlay would transfer her ownership, deeming this control mechanism both unsightly and fraught with drawbacks. Gushi was determined to eliminate it. The psychic contract also outlined the method for removing the tail ring. She needed only to input the recorded password psychically and envelop the ring with that energy. Deeming it imperative to act swiftly, Gushi immediately followed the instructions, successfully detaching the ring from the pearl fish's tail. The moment it was removed, the ring disintegrated into shimmering particles that dissipated into the air. Witnessing the ring's disappearance, the domesticated fish erupted in jubilation, with the pearl fish joining in the exuberant swimming. However, their joy was short-lived as the pearl fish, upon noticing the gaping hole in its tail, abruptly halted, sank into the water, and emitted a mournful, weeping cry. Gushi projected her psychic energy, inquiring of the other sea creatures, "What has happened to it now?" Chirping and chattering. The sea creatures eagerly explained the pearl fish's sorrow to Gushi. It turned out that the pearl fish, with its innate love for beauty, was particularly concerned about its appearance. Although it had shed the tail ring, the holes left behind were permanent, making it feel like a disabled sea creature, thus plunging it into deep sadness. Upon learning the reason, Gushi found herself both amused and exasperated. From the way the sea creatures had been fussing over and comforting it earlier, she had already sensed the pearl fish's delicate temperament, akin to a pampered little princess. Its current behavior only solidified that impression. The pearl fish swam listlessly on the ocean surface, weeping and drooping, exuding an air of utter despair as if ready to sink to the seabed and end its life. Gushi couldn't bear to see it in such a state, so she returned to her dwelling and retrieved a gemstone necklace shimmering with iridescent hues. She instructed the octopus to fasten the necklace onto the pearl fish's tail. Sure enough, as the octopus presented the exquisite accessory, the pearl fish's demeanor transformed instantly. It gazed at the necklace with curiosity, and after a brief exchange between the two sea creatures, the octopus adorned it with the jewelry. From that moment, their friendship deepened, and Gushi felt assured enough to entrust the task of pearl gathering to the octopus. After all, as close friends, handling a bit of excretion shouldn't be too difficult, right? Once the pearl fish was settled, Gushi retreated indoors, had a simple meal, and opened the group chat of Squad 2333. Earlier, she had procured 10 mist pendants and illusion bracelets, believing they held great market potential due to their practical functions for humans. These items could provide an extra layer of protection when encountering deep-sea races. Confidently, Gushi typed her message, "I've obtained 2 items, mist pendants for 15 gold coins and illusion bracelets for 25 gold coins. Would you like them?" She then shared detailed descriptions in the group. After 2 minutes with no response, Gushi grew restless. These should be selling like hotcakes. Could it be that no one wants them? If the squad members weren't interested, she planned to list them on the trading post, confident that someone in Zone 2333 would recognize their value. Just as she was about to switch platforms, the group chat erupted with a flurry of messages. "Su Lulu et Galim. I want them, I want them. I was just fetching my gold coins." Sun Yiming chimed in, "Gold coins ready. Sister Shi, let's trade." Gushi replied, "I thought you didn't want them," and was about to post them for sale. Lin Xiao added, "Sister Shi, we do want them." While others were still clamoring, Luo Lin directly transferred the payment. Gushi promptly sent the accessories his way. Shortly after, Luo Lin posted in the group, "Items received, they're excellent." Li Ruoyang inquired, "Sister Shi, are there many of these?" Gushi responded, "Not many. I currently have 10 sets available." Su Lulu, "Sister Shi, you're truly remarkable to acquire such items." Gushi, "As long as the price is right, I don't mind serving as a premium purchasing agent for you all." Through this transaction, she uncovered a new avenue. The artifacts of the Deep Sea clan clearly surpass those in human possession. By leveraging the auction effectively, enhancing humanity's overall strength would be entirely feasible, provided, of course, that sufficient funds are available to secure desired lots. Another challenge lies in the vast array of items at the Deep Sea clan auctions, many of which are unfamiliar to humans, leading to a scarcity of information. Moreover, it's impractical for her to document every single piece, given the sheer diversity, a task far beyond one individual's capacity. Yet, ignoring this issue entirely is not an option. Thus, she conceived the idea of utilizing the platform of New World to publish 10 item descriptions per issue. She can access this information through the spatial interface of the auction invitations, a trivial effort for her, but a crucial resource for all of humanity. She shared her vision with the members of Squad 2333, receiving their wholehearted support. Coinciding with the upcoming release of the next New World issue, the group agreed to launch the initiative immediately. Additionally, New World began soliciting reports of unusual items encountered by the public, recognizing that in the current circumstances, the more comprehensive human knowledge becomes, the higher the survival rate will be. After reaching an initial consensus, Gushi commenced the first public dissemination of selected items, including the mist pendant and the illusionary bracelet. Chapter 178. The Journal of the Detonation Zone. The selection of item information follows specific principles. They must be suitable for current human needs to ensure survival rates. And their acquisition should not be overly difficult, with values within the affordable range for most. Although humanity holds some advantage in gold reserves thanks to the game system, excessively priced items remain beyond their means. After careful deliberation, Gushi chose 8 additional items. Their procurement difficulty at the auction is minimal, and many can afford them. Of course, if anyone wishes to purchase, she alone can act as their agent at the auction. While delivery times may vary, it provides a viable pathway. In the market of Region 2333, New World has long been monetized, with each issue now priced at 200 copper coins, a modest sum, considering a single iron ingot sells for 100 copper coins. Although originally exchangeable for an iron ingot, as collective strength has grown, the ingot has significantly depreciated. Upon learning the current price trends, Gushi compared them with those of the Deep Sea Clan and couldn't help but sigh. In contrast, the Deep Sea Clan's prices are considerably lower. If only the Sea Wraith market could be integrated into the human economy, it would genuinely boost humanity's overall prowess. However, these thoughts remain mere musings, as encountering a Sea Wraith ultimately depends on fortune. At this moment, in Region 2333, the latest issue of New World is being released. In District 2333, the regional chat group, 9945-310-0000, Leroy Yang announced the release of the latest issue of New World, urging everyone to purchase it themselves. Confident in the revolutionary changes within this edition, Lee boldly printed 10,000 copies. After listing all the journals on the trading platform, he promoted them in the regional channel. Immediately upon his announcement, a rush of buyers flocked to his listings, selling 5,000 copies in just 10 minutes. Originally, the New World Journal captivated readers with its serialized novels, and recent leaks about upcoming events had heightened anticipation. However, upon acquiring the issue, readers discovered even more compelling content. One user expressed admiration, noting that someone had indeed followed through on the promise to disclose valuable information from the Survivors Alliance, thanking the contributors. Another echoed the sentiment, appreciating the wealth of useful insights shared by fellow survivors. A dissenting voice criticized the motives, accusing individuals of shamelessly selling survivor information to New World for monetary gain. In response, another user retorted that the issue's featured story involved the survivors themselves, finding humor in the situation. They marveled at the clarity of photographs included, crediting an unknown individual with a camera for capturing vivid images. The nickname 2333 was praised as fitting and evocative. Further discussion revealed that a prominent figure, referred to as Sister She, wielded a weapon of spikes, highlighting how true experts often embrace simplicity. One contributor admitted to sharing information willingly, initially intending it as a free service, but was compensated by the journal's mysterious benefactor, who supported their efforts for humanity's benefit. This act of generosity was widely applauded, with users expressing gratitude and urging the Survivors Alliance to learn from New World's approach. The issue also introduced a treasure appraisal section, featuring unfamiliar items that sparked curiosity. While their uses remained unclear, a user known as Preacher emphasized that open information on these objects not only aids in understanding the New World, but also enhances their market value by making them accessible for trade. After a brief absence, Preacher confirmed their presence, leading to inquiries about purchasing the featured items. Leroy Yang clarified that pre-orders were available but couldn't guarantee availability. Enthusiasm grew for items like the Illusion Bracelet, with multiple users expressing interest. The new column underscored New World significance, though uncertainties lingered regarding procurement and pricing. Nonetheless, it marked a promising start for District 2333's emerging market, encouraging collective exploration and collaboration for future developments while fostering initial awareness among the community. By the way, I possess some unique information as well. Could I submit to New World? I like to share my findings, as it seems the sea area I inhabit has exclusive specialties that appear unavailable elsewhere. I've realized this, but being relatively unknown, my attempts to advertise in chat channels go largely unnoticed. Despite the high quality of these items, their obscurity hinders sales. As similar sentiments proliferate, it becomes evident that many individuals hold valuable insights, yet without a proper platform, and due to their limited influence, these treasures remain buried. Now, New World offers such a platform, opening up new possibilities. Naturally, Yang supports this initiative wholeheartedly, promptly seizing the moment to announce a call for public submissions. The influence of New World continues to grow, with sales skyrocketing. The initial print run of 10,000 copies proved insufficient, selling out entirely within a single day. Previously, the journal lacked substantial useful content, leading some readers to resell their copies secondhand. However, with the enhanced value of its information, secondhand issues have become virtually unobtainable in the market. Residents of Zone 2333 persistently urge Yang to print more, but as a solo operator. Even with additional C print stones acquired later, producing tens of thousands of copies overnight is an impossible feat. Consequently, entrepreneurs have emerged, capitalizing on the opportunity by dissecting and selling individual sections of New World. Those who contributed to the journal initially did so casually, hoping to earn some extra pocket money, only to discover their earnings surpassed 3 days' wages. This has significantly fueled their creative enthusiasm. Particularly, Yu Ming, a shrewd and cunning figure, was astounded to receive nearly 1 gold coin for his first submission, leaving him in a daze. As he stood bewildered, a chilling gust of wind jolted him awake. Rushing to check the thermometer, he noted the temperature had plummeted by 12 degrees. Today marks the 56th day of the maritime calendar. The treasure hunt event concluded on the 48th day, meaning 8 days have passed. During this period, the inhabitants of Zone 2333 perceived no imminent disaster, continuing their routines as usual. Unbeknownst to them, the temperature had steadily dropped to 12 degrees. Abruptly plunging into the boiling water would elicit an immediate scalding sensation. But the true peril lies in the proverbial boiling frog scenario. By the time one realizes the danger, it may be too late. The persistent cooling has led most to conclude that this disaster is linked to low temperatures. Chapter 179, Collecting Dew and Warm Supplies. By the 57th day of the maritime calendar, temperatures continued their descent. Gushi awoke early, dark circles under her eyes like a panda's, rolling out of bed in a groggy state. Previously, with stable temperatures, her oversized glass jar lacked any temperature-regulating items. However, the sudden cold snap overnight roused her from sleep. Though she avoided catching a cold, the interrupted rest left her feeling thoroughly unrefreshed today. Fortunately, after waking last night, I had placed the fire elemental essence into the tempered glass container. Otherwise, this morning's frigid temperature of merely 7 degrees would have made rising from bed an unbearable chore. The chill in the air left Gushi feeling sluggish, her movements less nimble than usual, and she spent an extra 5 minutes completing her morning ablutions. After a hasty breakfast, she trudged listlessly downstairs. Although many shipboard tasks had been delegated to the octopus, responsibilities like collecting chests and smelting azure sea crystals still fell upon her shoulders. While gathering the chests, Gushi had developed a daily habit of inspecting their contents. Given the sheer volume she acquired each day, this allowed her to assess potential threats from the ongoing calamities based on the items revealed. Once she had organized all the chest contents and found everything in order, she couldn't help but remain vigilant, knowing that other dangers might lurk. For instance, previous heat waves and eternal nights had severely impacted the plants, and under normal circumstances, this current deep freeze would likely take a similar toll. Lost in thought, Gushi made her way to the cultivation chamber, meticulously examining the flowers, shrubs, and trees. Relieved to find no signs of debuffs afflicting the vegetation, she felt a temporary sense of ease. Moreover, during her inspection, she noticed delicate dewdrops glistening on the leaves, each one crystal clear and clinging to the plants. In ordinary times, such dew might have gone unnoticed, but in this extraordinary world, any new phenomenon could herald fresh opportunities. This realm abounds with treasures, yet it demands discerning eyes to uncover them. Without hesitation, Gushi returned indoors, retrieved an empty potion vial, and carefully collected half a bottle of the dew. She then scrutinized it closely. Dew, a premium form of water with purifying properties. The game's description was straightforward, lacking detailed usage instructions. But Gushi inferred that the dew held considerable value. Crucially, obtaining this dew required specific conditions, prompting her to seize the chance for more collection. She headed back to the storage room, this time fetching 100 empty vials, and summoned the octopus that was sweeping the floor. Hold off on the cleaning and feeding for now. Prioritize gathering this dew. If you run out of bottles, let me know, and remember to work swiftly. Worried the creature might struggle with the task, Gushi patiently demonstrated the process several times until the octopus could handle it independently, then sent it off to work. With the octopus diligently engaged, she resumed her training regimen, dedicating nearly all her spare time to it, which accelerated her progress remarkably. Upon emerging from her quarters later, she was surprised to find the octopus still collecting dew, even as the sun had risen. Could dew persist at this hour? Curious. She approached and observed the octopus deftly maneuvering, one tentacle cradling a vial, another gently tilting a leaf to drip the moisture inside. After finishing one leaf, it moved to the next, requiring over a dozen leaves to fill a single bottle. Spotting its owner, the octopus let out a couple of chirping sounds, conveying its boredom and reluctance to continue the tedious chore. Unfortunately, this task remained undone, forcing Gushi to handle it herself. With the fish workers already at her disposal, she had no desire to take on the labor personally. She dismissed the octopus's plea and instead shifted the blame onto it. I remarked, wouldn't it be better to keep a few more octopuses as subordinates? With extra hands, you could delegate such chores to them. Little did I know, this comment struck a nerve with the octopus, which began chattering incessantly. It preferred toiling alone over Gushi acquiring more of its kind. Puzzled, Gushi couldn't fathom why the octopus, who didn't oppose her raising other sea creatures, so vehemently resisted the idea of its own species. After observing it for a moment, she decided to set the matter aside for now and proceeded to feed the fish. Her usual nap time had been repurposed into a meditation session. Upon awakening in the afternoon and ascending to the third-floor pergola, she noticed the weather had shifted once more. Though the sky remained clear, the temperature had plummeted to a brisk 5 degrees, accompanied by a biting cold wind that stung her cheeks. While she possessed heat-resistant potions, she lacked any for cold protection. With the chill setting in, it was imperative she make preparations. Gushi opened the regional chat channel, anticipating a flurry of relevant item listings. In Zone 2333's regional chat group, 9944-110-0000, messages flooded in. As the air turns cold and waters freeze, it's time to gear up. Search ID 56,278 for essentials you need. Offers included cotton clothing, thick quilts, and braziers, with one boasting, for superior warmth, invest in a heavy coat. Exclusive fur coats, worthy of your possession. Yet, most peddled apparel, prompting her to wonder, why only clothes? What about protecting faces, ears, and hands? A fellow user agreed. Sister, you're right. I was about to ask the same. Another retorted. Women are so finicky. In times like these, who has the luxury for such details? A male voice chimed in. Though I'm a guy too, I think they have a point. I'd even add socks, scarves, and more to the list. The consensus was clear, but supply fell short. Everyone knows, but no one's selling. My face is chapped from the wind and cold. Before, we endured sun and rain out of necessity. Now with means, why isn't anyone offering skin protection? It hurts. Amid the chatter, someone announced, I've crafted homemade heat packs available for those in need. Enthusiasm followed. Heat packs already? Impressive. I'll buy. And me too. Gushi scanned the variety, overwhelmed by choices, but her priority aligned with the earlier mention of skincare products. In such harsh conditions, neglecting protection could easily lead to injury, and losing health points over minor issues would be troublesome. Sure enough, with a large population, vendors soon emerged. Listings for various skincare items and perfumes appeared, sparking disbelief. What's wrong with you all? In this place, you're still thinking about skincare and perfume? Intrigued, Gushi checked the seller's trade post and discovered that all the products offered were indeed effective. For instance, hydrating creams can shield users from dehydration in scorching environments, while certain perfumes possess effects such as inducing sleep or enchantment. Simply by observing her stall, it was evident that she had unlocked relevant professions. After browsing for a while, Gushi spent 10 silver coins to purchase 5 boxes of frostbite ointment. With its application, even the harshest winds could not harm the skin. When she switched back to the chat channel, a heated argument had erupted. Chapter 180, Warm Clothing Production, Material Secured. The point of contention, which Gushi found quite astonishing, revolved around the sale of skincare products and perfumes. This is sheer hedonism. In these dire times, how can anyone think of buying such frivolities? Through the screen, she could sense the speaker's righteous indignation. Glancing at her recent purchases and recalling the items of the stall, she wondered how this person had arrived at such a conclusion. Moreover, if others had the means and desire to spend, Why should it concern him? With a single remark, he had branded all buyers as pleasure seekers. Life was already arduous enough. Forcing people to glorify suffering would only invite backlash. Reflecting on the sea phantoms, a race that would pay exorbitant prices for even skeletal remains. Selling a bit of skincare and perfume seemed trivial indeed. As expected, his words provoked a collective outcry. We're in a new era now. What matters is practical utility. Don't jump to conclusions, my friend. I checked the stall. The products are excellent and fairly priced. What's wrong with buying skincare or perfume? I have the money, and I'll spend it as I please. The vendor's items clearly follow system recipes. If the system approves, how can you label them hedonistic? Enough said. If he won't buy, that just means more for the rest of us. Rare commodities, especially those aiding survival in disasters, were in high demand in Region 2333. Despite the ongoing protests, the vendor's stock sold out swiftly. Gushi continued her search and eventually discovered something unique at a shop selling fur coats. This store's garments stood out for their thermal insulation properties, being remarkably thin and unobtrusive in combat. Judging by the craftsmanship, the shop owner had likely unlocked a professional skill as well. Although the service was commendable, the products did not quite meet her standards. The materials, such as shark skin, were unsuitable for her needs. Consequently, Gushi directly added the shop owner, Lu Zhengji, as a friend. A seasoned member of Region 2333. Lu excelled at assessing situations and aligning with the majority, a skill that had ensured his survival thus far. As the temperature plummeted abruptly today, he transformed all the shark hides stored in his warehouse into garments and began hawking them in the chat channel. However, with numerous vendors flooding the market, his business remained rather sluggish. Suddenly, a friend request popped up, leaving him utterly bewildered. After all, as an ordinary, unremarkable merchant peddling clothes, who would seek to connect with him? Yet, when he glimpsed the applicant's name, his eyes nearly bulged out in disbelief. Good heavens, was he seeing things? The person adding him was none other than Gu Shi, the illustrious figure renowned throughout Region 2333. He knew his own place well. Why would such a luminary bother with a humble soul like him? But his hand acted faster than his mind, reflexively accepting the request amidst his shock. No sooner had he approved it than Gu Shi sent a message. Those clothes of yours are crafted using tailoring skills, aren't they? Do you take custom orders? In the game, vocational skills were no secret, yet their value varied greatly. For instance, his own tailoring could only produce garments with basic cooling or warming effects. And since clothing could still be looted from chests, his expertise held little prestige. Now, with the esteemed Gu Shi proactively reaching out for a custom piece. Regardless of the outcome, he felt he could boast about this for a month. Gu Shi, growing impatient from the lack of response, sent a follow-up. Only then did Lu Zhengji snap out of his daze and hastily reply, yes, I can do it. But how should we handle the transaction? Anxiety gnawed at him. This was undoubtedly a fantastic opportunity, yet his meager funds left him unable to afford premium materials. Since Gu Shi had directly approached him for a custom order, it must be due to dissatisfaction with the items on his trade stall, already his best offerings. What a pity to potentially squander this chance. Gu Shi inquired, are all the warming effect garments made of leather? What's the finest material you can provide? Lu Zhengji felt a flush of embarrassment, but honestly disclosed his limitations. As silence stretched on, his unease intensified. After several minutes, Gu Shi finally responded, how much material is needed to craft one garment? Lu Zhengji quickly answered, 50 units for warming effects, with leather materials yielding the best results. Gu Shi proposed, come my trade stall. I'll list 50 units of shark steel hide for 10 silver coins. To be clear, this isn't a sale, it's a material deposit. Once the garment is completed, I'll pay you 50 silver coins. If you agree, proceed with the trade. Unfamiliar with shark steel hide and clueless about its worth, Lu Zhengji faced a dilemma. Either purchase the materials and commit to the order or walk away from the deal. 10 silver coins were no trivial sum for him. After much internal debate, he chose to trust in Gu Shi's reputation and spent the 10 silver coins to acquire the 50 units of shark steel hide. By doing so, he implicitly accepted the terms of the transaction. If he were to abscond with these materials midway, the thought alone made Lu Zhengji shake his head vehemently. He dared not entertain such an idea, for he knew all too well who Gu Shi was. Moreover, having finally acquired a valuable skill, he intended to rely on it for his livelihood. Tarnishing his reputation was out of the question. Upon receiving the materials, Lu Zhengji promptly set to work crafting the garments. When Gushi received the finished clothes from Lu Jingji half an hour later, she noted a significant improvement in warmth retention. The previous garments sold at his trading post, priced at a mere 2 silver coins, offered only a warmth rating of 5. But with the upgrade to shark steel hide as the raw material, the warmth effect soared to 20. Surveying the enhanced statistics, Gushi felt a modicum of satisfaction and promptly transferred the agreed-upon payment to Lu Jingji. Grasping his earnings, Lu Jingji marveled at the profitability of custom tailoring, realizing he had stumbled upon a novel means of survival. This revelation solidified his resolve to manage his craft diligently and uphold his credibility. Just as he presumed his dealings with Gushi had concluded, she sent another message requesting further custom orders. With the initial collaboration paving the way, their subsequent interactions proceeded much more smoothly. By dinner time, Lu Jingji had fulfilled all the orders. No sooner had the preparations for the impending cold snap been addressed than Su Lulu completed the first batch of materials. Upon receiving them, Gushi wasted no time in dispatching the second batch of raw materials back to her. The day had grown late, and the biting wind outside dissuaded any immediate action. She decided to commence the renovation of the new vessel at dawn the following day. However, the new day unveiled a dramatic transformation. Chapter 181. Temperature drop and sea ice. On the 57th morning of the maritime calendar, Gushi awoke leisurely from her slumber, her eyes still heavy with sleep as she approached the window to peer outside. The sun shone brilliantly, casting its glow over the serene, deep ocean waters as usual. She mentally noted the placid scene and was about to draw the curtains when she spotted distant white objects drifting toward the future hull with the ocean currents. Squinting for a clearer view, she failed to identify the floating items, but instead observed the condition of the seawater surrounding the ship. Pausing in surprise, she scrutinized the scene once more. The sea surface appeared to be dotted with needle-like and flake-shaped ice crystals, shimmering under the sunlight. Slowly, she opened the window, only to be assaulted by a piercingly cold gust that rushed into the room, prompting her to swiftly shut it again. The sudden chill left her hands and face numb with cold. She hurriedly moved closer to the heater, waiting for her body to regain its warmth before summoning the octopus, which was busy preparing breakfast, to retrieve the thermometer from the third-floor awning. The octopus chirped in response, using 2 of its free tentacles to ascend to the 3rd level and bring back the outdoor thermometer. Taking the instrument from the octopus, Gushi checked the reading. The temperature displayed a mere 2 degrees. Gazing at the current temperature reading, Gushi was utterly dumbfounded, unable to suppress an inner monologue of disbelief. Even accounting for the thermometer's slight elevation due to indoor conditions, this chill is absurdly severe. Just days ago, the temperature decline had been gradual. What caused such an abrupt overnight plunge? Yet, regardless of the weather's whims, what must come will come. Maintaining a composed mindset is paramount. After organizing her thoughts, Gushi rose leisurely, tidied up, donned fresh attire, applied anti-frostbite ointment, and headed to the dining room for breakfast. Unlike other fish, the octopus is an omnivorous creature. When tasked with preparing the morning meal, it included itself in the arrangement, resulting in a peculiar scene. One human seated at the table, accompanied by a fish on the countertop, both partaking in breakfast. Midway through her meal, Gushi's gaze fell upon the octopus, and she pondered how the other fish had fared during last night's sharp temperature drop. The outdoor cold was undoubtedly more intense than the thermometer indicated, stirring concerns about the common shark's condition. After all, they lack formidable abilities and cannot be held to the standards of sea beasts or boss-level fish. Moreover, extreme cold drastically reduces fish activity, which would significantly hamper the efficiency of her fish-powered operations. The octopus chirped, chirp chirp. Author's translation: the sharks have grown largely immobile. Nodding in acknowledgement, Gushi pressed further. What about the sea beasts and the shark king? The octopus responded, chirp chirp. They are fine, but the frigid weather means we'll consume less food. Any other changes? Gushi inquired. Chirp chirp, it chirped. The wild chickens and ducks seem to be suffering from the cold. Their shelters need better insulation. Pausing to reflect, the octopus added another chirp. There is no dew today. The absence of dew came as no surprise to Gushi, given the severe cold that precluded any condensation. She patted the octopus's head, expressing satisfaction with its diligence. With its assistance, her productivity had notably improved. After breakfast, she descended alone and stepped outdoors. Though a biting wind persisted, Her new garments provided ample warmth, leaving her completely unaffected by the chill. However, physical comfort did not equate to universal immunity. For instance, the deck of the future was coated in a layer of frost, making her footing perilously slippery. The water stored in the purifier had frozen solid. While not yet completely immobilized, if the temperature continued to drop, it would soon harden like brick. Then there were the items in the planting boxes. Some plants displayed warnings of halted growth, while others appeared listless, likely on the verge of developing frostbite-like debuffs. Yet, to Gu Shi, these issues were trivial, as she possessed numerous strategies to counter them. The leftover shark bone structures, serving no purpose otherwise, were repurposed into temporary greenhouses. Without delay, she installed heaters inside the shark bone guest rooms. She then selected the ailing plants for the octopus to relocate indoors later. If the flora were to enjoy warm shelters, the wild chickens and ducks deserved equal treatment. After Gu, she placed the heater in the breeding area. The indoor temperature gradually rose, and the pheasants and wild ducks regained their vitality, no longer appearing half-dead. Resolving issues on the ship was straightforward, but the fish in the water faced greater challenges. Due to the sudden drop in temperature, the fish's efforts in pulling the boxes had significantly diminished. Observing the lethargic fish, Gu Shi simply regarded it as a well-deserved break for the diligent sharks. Upon completing her daily tasks, Gu Shi returned indoors to continue her training. After finishing her attribute exercises, she stepped outside to find that the white floating objects around had multiplied in number and grown considerably larger in size. A dull thud echoed, prompting her to rush toward the source of sound. Upon arrival, she discovered a white mass, comparable in size to her sofa, colliding with the ship, still scraping against it with a sharp, grating noise. This was Gu Shi's first close encounter with such a mass, initially mistaking it for marine debris. She reached out only to be met with an intense chill emanating from it. Forgive her oversight, had it not been for the cold, she might not have recognized it as floating ice. Despite the frigid weather, forming such ice under current temperatures seemed improbable, given that it was seawater, not fresh water. Rising to her feet, Gu Shi gazed into the distance, confirming it was no illusion. The sea was increasingly dotted with floating ice, and the chunks were far larger than those seen in the morning. Their current course, charted based on a previously acquired treasure map, seemed to lead into denser concentrations of ice the further they advanced. Pulling out the treasure map, Gu Shi noted the absence of precise distances, leaving her uncertain about the remaining journey. Moreover, the persistent cooling was not confined to her vicinity, but plagued the entire region 2333, making the floating ice ahead an ambiguous indicator. Involuntarily, her eyes drifted to the sharks surrounding the future, noticing their movements had slowed even more since dawn. While she had initially dismissed their sluggishness, the proliferation of ice complicated matters. After some thought, she resolved to press forward before temperatures plummeted further, relying on luck to determine their progress. Lingering at such a sluggish pace risked the sharks becoming incapacitated by nightfall, potentially causing the ship to drift off course without their pulling power. Even if they encountered extensive ice and entered frozen waters where the sharks might stall, it was preferable to veering off course now. Before setting out, Gu Shi fed the fish some fish feed to provide them with extra energy, enabling the sharks to travel farther and withstand the cold more effectively. Then, she directed the sharks to tow the ship toward the treasure's location. Spurred by the feed and the aquaculture system's commands, the sharks surged forward, pulling the vessel with renewed vigor. The luminescent ray was tasked with clearing ice from the navigation route, while the Shark King provided protection. The hoarding fish and pearl fish trailed behind the future, responsible for driving away larger chunks of ice in the vicinity. Aside from the increasing number of floating ice sheets, the journey proceeded smoothly. The outdoor temperature had now dropped to 8 degrees Celsius. Gu Shi stood on the third floor, gazing into the distance. Faintly, she spotted something pale, yellow moving on a large ice floe ahead. Upon closer inspection, the object had vanished. Instantly, a crimson light blazed brightly overhead. An enemy attack. Chapter 182. The deep-sea yeti crab. In such circumstances, even the slightest illusion could not be ignored, and the treacherous environment of half-ice, half-sea posed significant danger. Gu Shi immediately unleashed her psychic energy to scan the area. Her psychic senses, more acute than her physical ones, had advanced to the brink of A rank through recent cultivation. She was now halfway into that realm. Consequently, her comprehension and application of psychic power had deepened considerably. Concentrating her mental faculties, Gushi detected the pale yellow entity she had glimpsed earlier, darting rapidly between various ice flows. Based on the psychic feedback, the creature was not particularly large, measuring approximately 5 meters in length and 3 meters in width. As it drew nearer, she could discern its form more clearly. It was a type of sea crab. It possessed 2 large claws and several legs, resembling a crab, but why were its leg hairs so unusually long? Given its modest size, she decided that larger aquatic beings like the Shark King should not engage in combat, lest they cause chaos among allies without neutralizing the threat. Upon receiving orders to hold their positions, the sea creatures and the Shark King submerged to safeguard the vessel. With a single thought, 32 sharp spikes materialized. Gushi leaped onto them, the octopus clinging to the spikes as she swiftly advanced toward the crab's location. Squeak! It's a deep-sea yeti crab, the octopus exclaimed, sharing its knowledge despite not being a fish itself. For Gushi, any aggressive foe, regardless of species, be it crab or not, could not be tamed and must be eliminated. The distinction mattered little. The vast expanse of white floating ice provided perfect camouflage for the snow-white crab, and its psychic ability seemed to grant it invisibility, causing Gushi's repeated attacks to miss their mark. Bang, bang! A series of spikes slammed into the ice surface, shattering the floes into tiny fragments. The battleground remained some distance from the future, with Gushi holding the defensive line and the octopus on high alert, effectively confining the deep-sea yeti crab to the icy terrain. Psychic restraint. Another psychic restraint was cast, yet failed to ensnare the elusive creature. Gushi had previously attempted to capture the deep-sea yeti crab using psychic restraints, but its remarkable speed allowed it to consistently find openings. Compounded by its intermittent use of invisibility, Gushi had to continuously readjust her psychic energy flow, always lagging slightly behind in her transitions, which repeatedly enabled the crab to escape. After nearly 20 minutes of combat, she remained perplexed by the yeti crab's seamless ability to shift into stealth mode. Psychic assault. As the crab vanished once more, Gushi swiftly switched to an area of effect attack. Her most effective strategy against it now involved initiating a broad assault to pinpoint its location upon impact, followed by a psychic bind. Yet, by the time she reached the third step, the creature had often already fled. Despite being at the peak of B rank, the constant expenditure of psychic skills was draining her reserves rapidly. If this persisted, defeat was inevitable. High offensive power meant little if it failed to connect. How could she quickly locate her opponent? Her mind raced until a sudden idea sparked, lifting her brow. She needed the octopus to buy her some time. Though slower than the yeti crab, the octopus's large size allowed it to float on the sea surface and use its tentacles to shatter the ice. From the ongoing battle, she noted the crab's reluctance to enter the water, sticking to the floating ice. By enlarging the octopus to continuously pound the ice and disrupt the crab's footing, she could gain precious moments. Simultaneously, she had to ensure the crab didn't escape beyond a certain perimeter, or she'd risk losing the defensive line she'd established. Once her plan was set, Gushi summoned the octopus with her psychic power, resizing it to match the crab's stature, and directed it to harass potential landing spots. Meanwhile, she quickly accessed the trade channel to search for ink. With the widespread use of paper and pens, the market was flooded with affordable, readily available ink. Spotting it instantly, she purchased all available stock without checking prices, completing the transaction in under 20 seconds. Gushi manipulated the ink, uncorked the bottles, and first locked onto the yeti crab's position. Then, she poured the ink onto the floating ice where it stood. Instantly, the entire ice sheet turned pitch black, with dark ink spreading freely. The drenched yeti crab transformed into a coal-black figure, moving across the ice. Though still invisible, it now stood out starkly, a clear contrast against the white backdrop. More importantly, as the crab moved, it left behind distinct black trails, akin to a ghost wearing shoes treading on a blank sheet of paper. Got you. Gushi smirked, though her eyes held no trace of amusement. With the ability to precisely track the snowman crab's movements, she streamlined the transition of her psychic energy, eliminating one step in the process. This allowed her to match the creature's speed effortlessly. Now, in her vision, the snowman crab appeared as a fluctuating black speck, its camouflage rendered irrelevant. Observing its trajectory, she noted it moved in a figure-8 pattern, only altering its course upon completing each loop. Despite its swiftness, by preemptively laying psychic snares along its path, she could ensnare it. Having devised her strategy, Gushi promptly set it into motion. To avoid interference from the octopus, she directed it to plunge into the water and cleanse itself. With the octopus gone from the ice, the snowman crab lost its target, forced to evade the descending spikes while attempting to advance toward the future vessel. Gushi seized the moment now. Psychic snare. The net descended, successfully trapping the crab within its grasp. Struggling futilely, the snowman crab only managed to shed copious amounts of hair from its legs and claws, littering the ice with a disconcerting density that would unsettle even those without trypophobia. Gushi paused briefly, silently grateful for her lack of such a phobia. She descended gracefully on the spikes, halting at eye level with the captive creature. As it thrashed, its invisibility faded, revealing its full form. Its elongated claws, covered in pale yellowish-white fur, stretched an astonishing 35 meters despite the crab's overall length of merely 5 meters. Unbidden, Gushi's first thought was of the abundance of meat. Yet, this massive entity, with claws agape, signaled an impending attack, clearly unwilling to surrender. Chapter 183. Dismantle body. Cooked legs given the snowman crab size. Even a sudden assault posed little threat to Gushi. However, it unleashed its second psychic ability. Have you ever witnessed a crab's claw detach from its body? Under normal circumstances, it's implausible, but in this new world, the impossible seemed routine. Gushi hadn't anticipated the crab having a backup plan after a psychic snare. The detached claw moved independently, defying expectations. Swiftly, she manipulated the spikes to ascend, erecting a psychic barrier while casting another snare to immobilize the crab's main body. Attempting to restrain the detached claw with a psychic snare proved futile as it resisted the effect. Unfazed, Gushi adjusted her tactics, manually controlling the spikes for enhanced velocity, a technique she discovered during training, yielding swifter, more precise movements. Clang, clang, the spikes collided with the claw, producing sharp, resonant sounds as hard surfaces met, sparking intense friction and flashes of light. Subsequently, the acrid scent of scorched hair wafted into Gushi's nostrils. She narrowed her eyes slightly, deducing it was the odor of the snowman crab's claw bristles being singed. It was a pity she had recently dyed the crab's fur, masking any visible signs of charring. Nevertheless, with the opponent possessing only 2 claws against her 32 sharp spines, the numerical advantage clearly lay with her. Even if the crab managed to free its claws, it would scarcely alter the battle's outcome. Without hesitation, Gushi directed her remaining spines telepathically to assault the crab's main body. Currently, she manipulated 2 sets of spines with her hands at remarkable speed, while the others, though still mobile, suffered in both velocity and force. The telepathically controlled spines lunged at the crab's core, yet its shell proved exceptionally resilient, deflecting the attacks effortlessly. Gushi furrowed her brow. Were her assaults futile? But penetration wasn't necessary. Breaching the armor sufficed. The coral steel spines, with their lackluster offensive power, had become mere backups in her current stage of combat, reserved only for exceptional circumstances. Retracting 2 spines, she replaced them with coral steel ones and aimed directly at the crab's body. To her astonishment, upon contact, the coral steel spines shattered into fragments instantly, a phenomenon she had never encountered before. Typically, weapons only disintegrated when durability was exhausted, unless the foe possessed some unique talent or skill. Yet, there was no time for contemplation. The situation was dire. The snowman crab, with its swift movements and invisibility, was already a formidable adversary. Now, coupled with its impenetrable defense and ability to detach claws for independent combat, it posed a significant challenge: an invulnerable body and uncontrollable pincers. Among her combat potions, incendiary, blood-draining, and paralyzing. The latter 2 were ineffective without breaching the shell. Paralyzing and mental sufu were similarly ruled out, leaving only the burning potion as a potential tool. Lacking a clear strategy, she resolved to experiment relentlessly to uncover a weakness. Retrieving a burning potion from her pack, Gushi used telekinesis to uncork it and splashed it onto the crab's claw. The liquid hit its mark precisely, igniting the bristles and releasing a pungent stench. Despite this, the claw's assault continued unabated. Undeterred, she turned her attention to the main body, pouring another potion over it. Though unable to pierce the thick shell, she succeeded in setting its leg hairs ablaze. To her surprise, this seemingly minor attempt yielded extraordinary results. The long leg hairs of the snowman crab caught fire instantly, emitting thick black smoke from the crimson flames. More importantly, she observed that the crab's claw movements began to slow down noticeably. Gushi's eyes lit up with realization. Fire was effective. How had she overlooked such an obvious weakness? Glancing around, she noted the floating ice everywhere, and the snow crab's appearance clearly indicated it was a creature of frigid seas. What would such a being fear most? Heat. Of course. Identifying the foe's vulnerability made everything simpler. As a pharmaceutical expert, she had an abundance of potions at her disposal, continuously retrieving incendiary elixirs from her pack. She hurled them at the crab's furry legs. Under the potion's influence, the fur ignited and burned away entirely, leaving behind a faint, tantalizing aroma of roasted meat that nearly made Gushi drool. Indeed, since arriving in this world, she hadn't once savored crab meat. However, her culinary fantasies were abruptly interrupted by the snow crab's next move. The cooked legs detached from its body, just like the pincers, transforming into weapons that swiftly separated and flew through the air, employing its unique cloaking ability. All but the claws vanished from sight, hidden in the atmosphere. This sudden turn of events prompted Gushi to instinctively erect a psychic barrier, while she cursed aloud at the creature. "Don't you feel any pain?" Though her words were fierce, inwardly she remained composed. Did this snow crab experience pain? Recalling the earlier skirmish, she pondered why the pincer's speed had diminished during the initial assault. If that first strike had been effective, the crab must possess some sensation, making it unlikely for it to continue aggressive attacks while its other limbs were charred. Unless, considering this possibility, Gushi couldn't help but admire the creature's cunning. From the current situation, it seemed plausible that after her first attack, the crab had deliberately detached its legs. These limbs lay in wait, biding their time to deplete her incendiary potions before launching a surprise assault. If this were the case, the attack would likely come from all directions, aiming to encircle her. Moreover, to ensure the plan's success, it would use other distractions to capture her attention. Thus, the two pincers would undoubtedly unleash a powerful, attention-grabbing maneuver, regardless of its destructive force. Its diversionary effect would be potent. If her deductions were accurate, relying solely on her current psychic shield wouldn't suffice to withstand the onslaught. She needed to approach with greater caution. Since her adversary was putting forth such effort, she resolved to reveal her true capabilities. While the psychic barrier was useful, it had its flaws. For instance, it dulled the acuity of her five senses. As her psychic power grew, so did her sensory perception. Initially, she had believed in deploying the barrier as a first resort, but with enhanced abilities, she now recognized it could sometimes become a hindrance. At this moment, she felt obstructed by the very shield she had raised. Chapter 184. Peculiar Skills, Racial Traits. The initiative now lay with the snowman crab, and on the surface, it seemed she had to defend against its next assault. Yet if she remained fixated on defense, she would truly fall into passivity. Even if the crab's attack failed, it could simply repeat its previous pattern, trapping her in a cycle of reactive vulnerability. Thus, the best defense was a swift defense. To seize the fleeting moment for a counterstrike, she had to lower her protective barrier. Gushi took a deep breath and dispelled her shield. Instantly, her perception of the air currents sharpened once more. Though she couldn't pinpoint the exact locations of the invisible crab legs, she could keenly detect shifts in the airflow, ready to react the moment they drew near. Here they came. The two crab claws accelerated abruptly, spinning like electric drills as they lunged toward Gushi. Their rapid rotation disrupted the surrounding air, propelling them straight at her. She retreated swiftly, surprised by this method of assault, which rendered her airflow-based strategy ineffective. What to do? Should she reactivate her shield? Suddenly, a thick blend of ink, roasted meat, and charred scents wafted from the direction of the claws, absent elsewhere. Gushi nearly laughed aloud. Why hadn't she considered scent earlier? Such an obvious clue made it impossible to miss the leg's approach. Indeed, her lack of combat experience showed. She needed more battles to sharpen her judgment. This snowman crab proved remarkably clever, using airflow and focus to mask its intentions by coordinating legs and claws from the same direction. Fortunately, it likely lacked a sense of taste, or it might have accounted for the odors in its attack. Gushi summoned her most potent weapon, the Shark King's Fong Spike, gripping it firmly with both hands. In a fluid motion, she leaped over the spinning claws and, mid-flip, relying on her acute sense of smell, she struck repeatedly. Thump, 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 knocking the roasted legs from the air. Upon impact, their invisibility faded, and they plummeted downward. "Octopus!" she shouted. The creature surged from the sea, its tentacles coiling around the charred legs. The legless crab struggled to regain control, but the octopus held fast, immobilizing them. Unlike the pincers on the claws, which could easily snare the octopus, the legs bore only spines, rendering them harmless once seized. Now, Gushi could focus solely on the remaining claws. Though the snowman crab's body boasts formidable defenses, its offensive capabilities are negligible. Once its claws are neutralized, breaching its armor becomes feasible. However, these claws pose a significant challenge, swift in movement and devastating in power, as evidenced by their ability to cleave massive ice blocks in two upon contact. Such force would undoubtedly shatter any sharp spikes upon impact. Yet how does the crab manipulate these claws? Gushi refuses to accept any explanation without a logical basis. Even psychic abilities must adhere to underlying principles. Darting through the crab's relentless assaults, she notes the escalating speed of its attacks, a clear sign of agitation following the earlier loss of several legs. Composure and keen observation are the cornerstones of victory, while the enemy's restlessness signals its disadvantage. Gushi's sharp eyes meticulously track every motion of the snowman crab. During brief pauses between exchanges, her gaze rapidly shifts between the main body and the airborne claws. Although the claws appear detached, moving freely without psychic constraints, they react sluggishly to threats near the crab's core, just as when she hurled potion vials or directed spikes earlier. If the claws maintained their pursuit speed while close to the body, her attacks would never have landed. She hypothesizes that the claws cannot venture too near the main body, though this remains speculative and requires further validation. Evidently, the claws target her relentlessly, hindering any approach to the crab's core. Thus, breaking free from their pursuit could unveil an opening. Yet, merely evading them is a Herculean task, bordering on delusion. If she cannot advance, then she must lure the enemy closer. Alone, this would be impossible, but she commands an aquatic entourage. In terms of speed, the radiant rays are no slouches. Despite their sea-level psychic strength, their velocity exceeds 250, dwarfing the B-level octopus's mere 145. Gushi promptly dispatches a psychic message, summoning the rays to push the ice block containing the snowman crab to her designated spot. With a thunderous roar, the octopus conjures towering water columns, erecting a barrier that abruptly halts the claw's advance. Under the immense hydraulic force, the claws are compelled to alter their trajectory, transforming into a drilling form once more. The moment they breach the water wall, Gushi seizes the opportunity. With a sharp cry, the rays propel the floating ice, now stripped to the crab's shell, close behind her. Manipulating her spikes, she swiftly retreats and lands squarely atop the snowman crab's carapace. Just as the crab claw was about to strike Gushi, it abruptly plummeted into the water with a splash. What had happened? Had it malfunctioned? Gushi didn't understand the mechanism behind it, but she knew better than to let her guard down. If she approached to investigate now, what if the claw suddenly revived? She signaled the luminous rays to retrieve the claw, and several fish diligently dragged it over, laying it before her. It truly seemed deactivated. Gushi prodded the claw with her spike a few times, finding it completely unresponsive. Then, she channeled her mental energy to sense the Yeti crab's spiritual state. If an entity is unified, their spiritual energies remain interconnected. Though invisible to the eye, a master of mental manipulation can perceive these energies. The main body of the Yeti crab was still alive, enveloped in a layer of spiritual energy, yet its claw bore none at all. Her object manipulation relied on threads of mental energy to control objects, enhancing their agility, but they couldn't exceed a certain distance from her. In contrast, the Yeti crab's ability was fundamentally different. Its essence lay in remote control, where proximity became a fatal flaw. She couldn't fathom how this skill was achieved. Game prompt. Humans lack the physiological capacity to learn or contemplate the mental skills of other races. The long-dormant game message suddenly echoed in Gushi's mind, blatantly advising her not to dwell on racial limitations. Apologies to all dear readers for the delayed update due to overtime work. Rest assured, even with overtime, I will still post updates, though they may be later in the day. If any issues arise, I'll inform you in advance. Thank you for your continued support. Chapter 185. Steamed Crab, Reward for the Kill. Stripped of its offensive capabilities, the Yeti crab now resembled nothing more than a large platter. With its legs gone, it was immobilized. Gushi crouched down, examining the platter closely, but found no trace of eyes. The crab, however, seemed uneasy under her gaze, its massive body beginning to spin like a flat-topped foe, startling her. As it whirled, its speed gradually slowed until it came to a halt. Though now mostly still, it remained alive, and to finish it off, she needed to pry open its shell. Gushi summoned the Shark King's tooth spike back in her hand, raising it high. The glint of its tip shimmered in the sunlight as she aimed at a specific spot and thrust down forcefully. Clang! The spike struck the crab's hard shell, emitting a sharp sound, the recoil numbing her forearm. Yet, the shell remained unscathed. Gushi shook her numbed arm, aware that the Shark King's tooth spike had a base attack of 300 points. Now wielding the spike herself, her total attack power combined with her own strength surpassed 400. Yet it still failed to pierce the snowman crab's incredibly tough shell. She sighed in resignation, gazing at the massive creature. She had hoped to avoid this. But with her attacks proving futile, there was no other choice. Summoning the octopus and luminous rays to stand guard, she decided to return to the ship for supplies. Without hesitation, she packed the roasted crab leg meat, previously held by the octopus, in her backpack. Its rich aroma and succulent flesh promised a delightful feast. Upon boarding the ship, Gushi headed straight for the kitchen, gathering various cooking utensils, ingredients, and fresh water. She also retrieved several fire essence crystals to serve as fuel. A sudden realization struck her. The snowman crab rested on a floating ice sheet, and the intense heat from the fire essence might melt it away. Thus, she added some insulating materials to her list, finding a good supply of cinder crystal bricks perfect for the task. After packing everything, she returned to the ice floe. Finding the snowman crab motionless, Gushi recognized its feigned death and ignored it, focusing on her preparations. First, she constructed a low, wide, insulated furnace using the cinder crystal bricks, carefully measuring and laying them out. Soon, the structure was complete, and she directed the octopus to place the crab atop the makeshift stove. With the snowman crab sprawled out on the cinder crystal base, Gushi turned to handling the ingredients. Knowing that such a massive creature, likely aged and teeming with parasites and bacteria, required thorough cleaning before cooking, she set to work. Despite its shell's deceptively pristine white hue tinged with hints of yellow, it was filthy. Uncorking a bottle of strong liquor, she poured it generously over the crab, the potent aroma assaulting her senses even though she abstained from drinking. Using a cloth, she evenly coated the shell with the alcohol, which inexplicably deepened its yellowish tint, and soaked the legs and claws as well. After this initial cleansing, Gushi produced a large brush, her eyes gleaming with determination as she scrubbed the shell vigorously. To her astonishment, dark and yellow grime oozed from the bristles, a sight so repulsive that she paused to rinse it off with water before resuming the scrubbing with renewed vigor. When consuming such hard-shell delicacies, it is imperative to thoroughly cleanse the exterior. Undeterred by the tediousness, Gushi scrubbed the shell once, then again, and ultimately repeated the process a total of 3 times before she was satisfied. Although the interior remained untouched, the outer surface appeared quite presentable after a meticulous cleaning. She gently patted it dry and proceeded to arrange the fire essences in an orderly fashion beneath the shell. Given the snowman crab's sufficiently flat physique, there was no need for flipping during cooking. Thus, shin ing it with some ginger seemed appropriate. 7 fire essences were placed in a circular formation under the shell, with ginger chunks piled neatly beside them. After completing the preparations, Gushi crouched nearby, her eyes gleaming with intense focus as she watched over her seafood feast. Under the heat from the fire essences, steam began to rise, yet the underlying warmth was contained by the ember crystals, causing all the vapor to converge in one direction. Gushi was uncertain of the exact temperature of the fire essences, but observing their dual capability to refine sea blue crystal or ensure for cooking, she surmised that the longer they were exposed, the more energy they accumulated, thereby increasing their heat. Consequently, she had to maintain constant vigilance over the flame intensity, lest the dish burn and be rendered inedible. An hour later, a game notification arrived. Game notification: you have defeated the boss snowman crab, obtaining 30 snowman crab shells and 8 snowman crab claws. Game tip: since you processed the snowman crab's meat before its demise, no additional snowman crab meat will drop. Upon perceiving the announcement, Gushi's eyes widened in astonishment. This was actually a boss? She had mistaken it for a mere sea creature. However, her luck seemed rather poor this time, as the drops were minimal in both variety and quantity. Yet, the prospect of the boss treasure chest offered a chance to turn her fortune around. With practiced ease, Gushi performed her unique skill of hand-washing in one fluid motion and elegantly opened the chest. 100 gold coins. Excellent. She was quite pleased, as it would allow her to purchase numerous items. Invisibility potion recipe. Absolutely splendid, adding another formula to her repertoire, so she promptly learned it. After acquiring the new potion recipe, she turned her attention to the final parchment scroll. What she saw left her outwardly composed, but inwardly tumultuous with excitement. It was the blueprint for the fire elemental cannon. The water elemental cannon was the standard heavy artillery on top-tier vessels, a benchmark she herself had established, as she was the sole possessor in the entire 2333 region. Although she had recently crafted several water elemental cannons for others, it did not diminish the overwhelming firepower advantage of her own ship. Now, with what appeared to be a counterpart in the fire elemental cannon, likely offering similar effects, she pondered whether it was necessary to construct it after already having the water variant. Despite the questions swirling in her mind, it did not hinder her from learning the blueprint immediately. Overall, the reward from slaying the snowman crab boss were fairly average, but the items she obtained after her ritual hand-washing were reasonably satisfactory. However, since her boss had failed to yield rewards, she felt compelled to replenish her energy through a hearty meal. Instantly, her eyes blazed with intensity as she fixed them upon the snowman crab. She meticulously cleaned the crab legs and claws, placing them aside. Before long, a tantalizing aroma wafted into Gushi's nostrils. Her nose twitched delicately, and a stream of saliva welled up in her mouth. Chapter 186. Sharing crab meat, sea ice shards. The fragrance was utterly intoxicating. Gushi couldn't help but wipe away the non-existent drool at the corner of her lips, her eagerness to take a bite overwhelming. The snowman crab, once white-shelled, had now turned a vibrant red from cooking. Red minute was done. A sly grin spread across Gushi's heart as she joyfully picked up a crab leg. Anticipating the heat, she had preemptively consumed a heat-resistant potion, allowing her to indulge without fear of burns. She snapped off the spines from the leg, revealing the tender crab meat clinging tightly to the shell. A simple scrape would yield a mouthful of succulent flesh. Though they appeared as spines, they were as thick as her fingers, and just a few could satisfy her hunger. The delicate crab meat carried a subtle hint of wine aroma, enhanced by the removal of any odd scents with ginger earlier, leaving only its rich, savory essence. Gushi picked up a piece and took a hearty bite. The sweet and savory crab meat was firm yet springy in texture. With that first taste, her eyes lit up instantly, and she devoured several more pieces before pausing. Now, though her palate craved more, her stomach could take no further indulgence. She gazed regretfully at the remaining meat, resigned to saving it for later enjoyment. After processing the leftover crab legs and storing the fire essence, Gushi hummed a cheerful tune, content and full. Yet, while she reveled in satisfaction, the fish that had toiled nearby, without reward, grew discontent. The octopus slapped the icy surface angrily, and the luminous rays darted through the water, stirring up agitated splashes. Their escalating movements finally caught the fish owner's attention. Only as she was packing up did she notice their distress. Observing their tantrum-like behavior, Gushi cast a sidelong glance and uttered words of feigned surprise with a calm demeanor. "Ah, I was just testing if the snowman crab was cooked. Now it's time to reward our great contributors." As the sea creatures couldn't fully comprehend, they were easily deceived. Thus, at her words, they quietly lined up, awaiting their share. Facing the gaping mouths and the nearly empty crab shell platter, Gushi had a sudden inspiration. The octopus, being an indiscriminate eater, would accept any human food, but the other sea creatures currently only consumed fish feed, making the luminous rays easier to coax. She crouched down and beckoned the rays over, saying, "I know you all don't fancy snowman crab, right? So, how about I substitute it with fish feed instead?" The luminous rays were utterly bewildered. Accustomed to their daily diet of fish feed, which they found quite palatable, they would naturally agree when their keeper inquired about switching. Just as they were about to nod in consent, the octopus abruptly slapped several of the rays. "Squeak! Don't be fooled. You mustn't. I can exchange fish feed for you." The octopus knew all too well that the keeper likely intended to dismiss them with a mere 2 or 3 packs of fish feed. Yet it was willing to offer 5 packs in return for a single portion of snowman crab meat as a reward for the race. Gushi gazed innocently at the octopus, musing on its cleverness, though the key factor was its abundant supply of fish feed and its ability to store unopened packs, enabling such exchanges. Moreover, the octopus had even persuaded the sea creatures to consume this meat, suggesting it might hold additional benefits for them. Pondering this, Gushi rose and, under the watchful eyes of the fish, embedded sharp spikes into the snowman crab's shell plate. She then signaled the octopus to exert force, pressing down on the spikes to pry open the hard shell. Having already acquired numerous legs, she generously relinquished all the meat on the plate to the sea creatures. Rewarded by their keeper, the octopus willingly took charge, dividing the meat from the shell into many portions. Naturally, only the sea creatures and the shark king received shares, while the other sharks did not. Upon consuming the snowman crab meat, the rewarded sea creatures triggered a surge of psychic energy that Gushi distinctly felt emanating from her fish. Hastily, she opened the aquaculture system to check their status. While other attributes remained unchanged, the psychic energy column displayed a red, upward-pointing triangle beside each fish. Consulting the status explanation, she discovered this indicated an accelerated accumulation of psychic energy. Although the boost lasted only 48 hours, she reasoned that even a modest gain was better than none. Astonished by this revelation, Gushi hadn't anticipated such advantages from a boss's meat. Should she, then, hunt more bosses? Reflecting on past experiences, since she had slain the snowman crab boss, might there be other snowman crabs in existence? Had she skipped confronting lesser foes and directly tackled a major one? Could this boss have been isolated or lost? The more she pondered, the more peculiar it seemed, stirring a sense of unease. For safety's sake, she decided to hasten her journey. With that thought, Gushi quickly gathered her belongings, returned to her boat, and resumed sailing toward the treasure map's destination. On the 58th day of her maritime calendar, amidst a landscape of pure white snow, she approached the window, watching as falling thaw dissolved into droplets upon touching the thin ice on the sea surface. Yesterday's sky was clear and boundless, yet today it has turned into a somber, oppressive gray. After completing her morning routine and dressing, she stepped onto the deck to find a delicate layer of snow had accumulated, with an octopus playfully rolling on its back across the frosty surface. Gushi checked the temperature. It read 10 degrees. Though not feeling the chill, she instinctively drew her garments closer. The sharks moved more sluggishly than the day before, and the expanse of white floating ice had multiplied. Crouching by the water's edge, she prodded the sea surface with her index finger, piercing through a thin barrier with ease. Extending her hand vertically into the water, she submerged her fingers and scooped up a handful, then slightly parted her fingers to let the seawater trickle down, leaving behind tiny shards of ice in her palm. Within moments, the warmth from her hand melted the icy fragments away. Gushi reflected that she had observed the water in the same manner the previous day. Back then, the water was cold but nearly devoid of ice particles. Overnight, the sea surface temperature had dropped significantly. If this trend continued, it wouldn't be long before the ocean froze over entirely. Due to the previous day's attack by snowman crabs, they hadn't managed to repair the vessel, and now that task would have to be postponed further. She needed to devise a method to navigate the ship in the right direction, even as the sea iced over, especially with the fish-powered fuel running low. Chapter 187, Crafting the Fire Element Cannon. Colliding with floating ice amidst the icy, snow-covered sea, a howling wind roared. Large chunks of floating ice drifted with the ocean currents across the vast expanse. The day before, Gushi had directed the sea beasts and the Shark King to clear a path. But today she intended to test the effectiveness of the water element cannon against the massive ice flows. As the ice layer thickened, relying on firepower to forge ahead seemed inevitable, making it crucial to assess the cannon's potency against the ice in advance. Taking advantage of the still adequate daylight, Gushi commanded the octopus to aim the water element cannon at a distant, colossal ice flow. The octopus chirped cheerfully, leaping onto the cannon, with one tentacle gripping the control handle tightly, while the others adjusted the firing direction. As the handle was pulled down, a brilliant blue energy sphere gathered at the cannon's mouth, emitting a dazzling glow. With a thunderous boom, the energy blast shot toward the target, sending waves surging high into the air. Gushi watched the towering splash from afar, thinking the water element cannon's power remained undiminished and that the large ice floe must have been shattered into fragments. However, her optimism was premature. As the waves subsided, the massive ice block appeared scarcely reduced in size. Upon closer inspection, the blast had only chipped away a thin outer layer of the floe. Tilting her head in contemplation, Gushi pondered the shortcomings of the attempt. Was the water element cannon lacking in strength? Clearly not, as the waves it stirred were comparable to before. Yet its impact seemed to diminish upon striking the ice. The only plausible explanation she could conceive was the issue of elemental affinity. The cannon's energy derived from water, and since ice is essentially frozen water, using water to attack water naturally led to a reduction in effectiveness. Merely speculating wouldn't lead to progress. Action was needed to move forward. Having just studied the blueprint for the fire element cannon, she decided to test her hypothesis by crafting it. Gushi opened the crafting interface and reviewed the specifications. Fire element cannon, require materials. Fire essence X1, mystic iron X10. Proceed with crafting? Yes. The fire element cannon and water element cannon were of the same tier, differing only in the elemental essence used. Fortunately, she possessed a far greater reserve of fire essence than water essence. As the construction commenced, requiring a few minutes, Gushi closed the interface and waited patiently. After the brief interval, she retrieved the newly forged fire element cannon, relocated the previously used water element cannon, and installed the latest creation. Being a novel weapon, she disregarded the octopus's eagerness to operate it and took control herself. Externally, the two cannons were indistinguishable, necessitating a manual marker for identification. To facilitate differentiation, Gushi tied a red ribbon around the fire element cannon, fashioning an elegant bow with two delicate bells dangling beneath. At the slightest touch, the bells chimed melodiously. The octopus, initially disheartened by losing firing privileges, now amused itself by playing with the tinkling adornments. Checking the time, Gushi noted over 10 minutes had elapsed, indicating the fire element cannon should be nearly charged. She signaled the octopus to cease its antics, adjusting the cannon's aim toward a floating ice target. She pulled the control lever. A sphere of orange-yellow energy began to coalesce at the muzzle. Within seconds, the energy ball swelled to the size of a ping-pong ball, eliciting a puzzled expression from Gushi. After a dozen more seconds, it expanded to tennis ball dimensions, prompting a furrowed brow. Upon full charge, the tennis ball-sized projectile launched forth sluggishly. Gushi stared in disbelief, recalling the water element cannon's energy sphere as significantly larger and swifter. By comparison, this fire element cannon's performance rated an E, its lethargic pace evoking concern over whether it would even reach its destination. As Gushi monitored the lackluster projectile, the octopus, unimpressed by its feeble speed and size, lost interest in the bells and adopted a disdainful demeanor. Finally, after a protracted journey, the energy sphere collided with the floating ice. The impact produced a faint hum, scarcely louder than a mosquito's buzz, without so much as a ripple. Gushi sighed, massaging her temples in chagrin. She had mistaken the two cannons for equivalents, only to discover the vast disparity in potency, regretting the wasted fire essence. Resigned, she decided to ponder alternative strategies. With no inclination to move the disappointing cannon, she sat down amidst the chilly breeze, seeking a moment of quiet reflection. The sharks gradually towed the future forward, and after more than 10 minutes, they finally reached the target area of the earlier bombardment. The moment she laid eyes on the colossal iceberg, Gushi sprang to her feet. She was determined to uncover the composition of this ice, pondering how it could possess such formidable hardness. With a massive floe now merely a dozen meters away from the future, Gushi stepped onto her spiked weapon and soared toward it. The more she observed, the more she felt a sense of futility. The previous water element cannon had at least managed to scrape the surface of the iceberg, whereas the fire element cannon had proven utterly ineffective, not even achieving a superficial impact. Wearily, Gushi landed on the giant floe, her spirit wounded, craving a moment of quiet reflection. Yet, tranquility alone was insufficient. She resolved to vent her frustration by prodding the ice with her spikes. Seeking a petty revenge for her bruised ego, she alighted gracefully upon the vast, stable surface of the ice, standing firm and secure. But this very steadiness left her conflicted. unsure whether to feel relieved or irritated. In a huff, she drew her spikes, gripping them tightly with both hands, raising them halfway before letting them fall carelessly. The tips sank less than a centimeter into the icy surface, a clear indication of her distracted state. With a dismissive pout, she retracted the spikes. Why direct her anger at the ice? She reasoned. It would be more satisfying to take it out on the octopus instead. Crack! Despite the howling wind, Gushi thought she detected a faint sound. She pricked up her ears. Crack! This time, focusing intently, she heard it more distinctly. It resembled the noise of something shattering, though too faint to be certain. She listened more closely. Crack! Now, not only did she hear it, but she also scanned her surroundings. Crack! Suddenly, Gushi felt her balance falter, and in a panic, she swiftly stepped onto her spikes. As she did, her gaze dropped to the giant floe beneath her, which had split open with a massive fissure, a significant portion breaking away from the main body. Peering closely, Gushi noticed a small indentation along the crack, the very spot she had prodded earlier. Astonishment washed over her. Since when had she become so powerful? A mere absent-minded poke had yielded greater results than the water element cannon. Elation and joy surged within her. If she possessed such strength, she would strike again, avenging the loss of her fire element essence. Hovering on her spikes, close to the ice, Gushi prepared to deliver another casual jab. However, before her spike could even make contact, the ice surface emitted a series of cracks and shattered into fragments. Shattered? Just like that. Her heart raced wildly. This was nothing short of a setup, an absolute fraud. Her spike hadn't even touched it. How could such a massive block of ice disintegrate into dust? Chapter 188. The correct way to unleash the fire element cannon. Witnessing the disintegration of the giant iceberg left Gushi with a complex mix of emotions. One moment she had been plotting revenge, and the next, it had crumbled apart, leaving her clueless as to the cause. With a troubled expression, she studied the ice. And suddenly, her eyes caught sight of intricate cracks forming deep within the thick frozen layers. Huh, what could this be? Gushi wore a puzzled expression as she maneuvered the spike closer, using it to flip over a piece of ice. The underside of the floating ice emerged, appearing somewhat loose. Curiously, she gently prodded it again with the spike, causing the lower ice surface to break away. She sensed that the entire ice block seemed partially melted. Recalling that this particular ice had been struck by the fire element cannon, she wondered, could this be one of its functions? Could it actually melt ice? No matter how she thought about it, Gushi found it rather unbelievable, so she resolved to test it once more. This time, she located a larger floating ice chunk nearby. After firing the cannon, there was still no significant splash. She discarded the fire element cannon and flew directly toward the massive ice floe. Instead of landing on it, she simply poked at it with her spike. And just like the previous one, it quickly shattered into uneven, smaller pieces. This outcome directly confirmed her earlier hypothesis, leaving Gushi astonished once again. The fire element cannon seemed to misfire, but it was actually deconstructing from within, albeit through an unusual heating method. Wait, heating? The essence of fire element is precisely heating. Although a single fire element core can create a fire element cannon, its heating capacity is quite limited. What if she used several cores? While the cannon's formula is fixed, the temperature increase isn't. At this thought, Gushi's eyes lit up. To verify her conjecture, she hastily constructed a platform using ember crystal bricks, then placed 4 fire element cores into a specially reserved slot, covering them with the fire element cannon as a lid. This setup would concentrate all the thermal energy generated by the cores onto the cannon. The heating process required some time. She only needed to wait a bit before firing. Filled with anticipation, Gushi waited as time passed. As she did, she pondered the differences in power between the fire element cannon and the water element cannon. The water element cannon's strength lies in its impact, capable of creating massive splashes and delivering formidable force. In contrast, the fire element cannon's power seems to stem from a peculiar vibrational dissolution. No visible flames, but extremely high temperatures. The earlier shot, only the size of a tennis ball, had nearly shattered a giant ice floe, demonstrating its immense actual potency. If she could artificially raise the cannon's temperature, it would likely inflict even greater damage. Time slipped by as Gushi indulged in her delightful musings. Estimating that the moment had arrived, she stood up and approached the enhanced fire element cannon with eager excitement. Happily, She pulled the control lever, and an energy sphere began to gather at the cannon's muzzle. This time, the energy sphere's color remained orange-yellow, but started to shift toward blue. It rolled into the size of a ping-pong ball, then quickly swelled to that of a tennis ball. With more time before firing, the energy continued to accumulate rapidly, growing to the size of an apple, then a grapefruit, and finally a basketball. Seeing the latest energy sphere, she was overjoyed. She couldn't wait to witness the actual effects of this upgraded fire element cannon. She clenched her fists tightly against her chest, her gaze fixed intently on the energy sphere. As she stared, a sudden exclamation escaped her lips. Good heavens, it's on fire! As she watched in disbelief, a nearby wooden trash bin burst into flames. She hastily summoned the octopus to fetch seawater and extinguish the blaze. Amidst her frantic efforts, the energy sphere completed its accumulation and, with a resonant hum, shot forth toward its target, propelled by a wave of intense heat that hissed through the air. Where the fire element cannon passed, steam billowed from the water, the sheer force of the energy leaving a profound mark upon the ocean surface. The octopus, bucket in hand, was so startled that it dropped its container into the sea with a splash. Under the shared gaze of she and the octopus, the energy sphere collided with a massive iceberg, this time stirring up splashes not from the impact itself, but from the rapid melting and collapse of the ice into the water. Both human and creature stood transfixed, utterly lost in awe, especially Gushi, who had not anticipated the amplified ferocity of the fire element cannon after manual adjustments. To think she had only utilized 4 fire element crystals. The thought of employing a dozen or more sent shivers down her spine. Warning, warning. The future is experiencing a fire outbreak. Immediate action required. The sudden game alert jolted she from her stupor. She slapped her forehead in frustration. How could she have forgotten? Her ship was ablaze. Earlier, she and the octopus had been battling the flames, but the sheer power of the fire element cannon had captivated them. Now was not the moment for admiration. Although the cannon's base was insulated with fire-resistant ember crystal, the intense heat generated during its pre-launch phase had ignited the wooden bin, and the flames quickly spread to other areas. Despite the lack of obstructions, the scattered high temperatures inflicted significant damage to the ship's foundation, exacerbated by the residual energy from the cannon's discharge. Hurry, put out the fire. Cool it down. Octopus, summon a water jet. The deck beneath her feet grew unbearably hot from the scorching heat, making it difficult to stand even in the cool weather. The octopus spurted water jets, but their feeble streams were no match for the inferno, forcing it to unleash more potent, spiritually infused torrents. This led to a chaotic scene around the vessel, followed by a series of alerts about the ship's deteriorating condition. She lamented, "This is a dilemma. Fighting the fire only causes more damage. Yet ignoring it is not an option." After a tumultuous struggle, the duo finally managed to quell the flames, but not without leaving the deck scarred and battered. Only the ember crystal-reinforced structures had contained the blaze. Surveying the marred surface, she heaved a deep sigh. Enough of this, she thought. Even with just 4 fire element crystals, my ship can barely withstand the energy. Had I used a dozen or more, it would have turned into an inferno. To enhance the firepower, I must first resolve this fire hazard. Indeed, one must not be overly greedy but learn moderation. The function of the fire element cannon has been tested, alleviating concerns about the sea freezing over and hindering progress. Thus, it seems time for her to refit the vessel. She silently glanced at the deck, which, though damaged, remained intact due to the effect of sturdiness heart. Although it was a fire disaster, she need not dismantle the ruined sections again. Instead, she could directly lay new decking made of advanced materials. As the saying goes, a loss may turn out to be a gain, for one never knows fortune or misfortune until the very end. Chapter 189. Entering the ice plains, the fish vanish maritime log, day 59. In this stretch of ocean, the morning temperature has plummeted to 12 degrees. The once howling winds have weakened considerably, but the drifting light snow has grown denser, hinting at a trend toward heavy snowfall. Early this morning, she received the second batch of fusion materials sent by Su Lulu, combined with the previous shipment. She now possesses enough to reconstruct 100 square meters of the ship's foundation. After completing her basic daily tasks, she took up her hammer to repair and replace the damaged deck with a new material. The future has undergone 2 foundation material upgrades thus far. Initially, wood was used, providing a base defense of 1, later replaced by iron blocks that increased the defense per unit to 2. Now, with the fusion material foundation, the base defense has surged tenfold, reaching a remarkable 20 per unit. After her diligent efforts, Gushi finished installing the fusion materials. She accessed the ship's information to review the future's updated statistics. Future area, 600 storm resistance, 600 defense power, 2800 overall defense, 5320 integrity, 150,000. Upon seeing the new data, Gushi felt a surge of inner delight and mused to herself, I never imagined that replacing just 1/6 of the foundation would boost base and overall defense so significantly. Truly, my dedication has not been in vain. Such defensive strength makes the wait utterly worthwhile. Although the future has only had 1/6 of its base replaced, this seemingly minor alteration has dramatically elevated its construction progress. After the Eternal Night concluded, Gushi's ship had a construction level of 5,639, still ranking first. But the gap with others was narrowing. Now, with 100 foundation units replaced, the construction level has leaped to 6,483. With the base upgrade complete, Gushi turned to the marketplace to search for the next batch of raw materials. After purchasing all reasonably priced pearls and aquamarine crystals, she switched to the chat channel of Region 2333, intending to post a few acquisition notices. However, upon entering, she found everyone discussing her skyrocketing construction level. For the inhabitants of Region 2333, if this data had accumulated gradually over time, it might not have drawn much attention. But the fact that it surged in less than an hour and belonged to Gushi's vessel made it the hottest topic of the moment. Observing the chatter, Gushi decided it would be wiser to remain silent for now. District 2333, Regional Chat Group, 9924-710-000064836483. I'm about to flip the table. How on earth is this ship being repaired? I'm utterly devastated. Someone advised using better materials last time, so I took the suggestion and crafted the ship with shark bones. Yet why hasn't the construction rating improved? By the way, my ship has reached 400 square meters. Brother upstairs, don't despair. I used mystical iron, and even with a mere 300 square meters plus housing, my construction rating only hits 2,000. So, esteemed experts with high ratings, what materials do you employ for shipbuilding? Beyond basic components, the newly introduced defense systems require premium materials as well. Superior resources naturally elevate the construction score. Thus, sister, she must possess advanced items in her defensive setup, right? Such an impressive rating undoubtedly stems from excellence in every aspect. However, doesn't anyone else feel that with ships growing ever larger, they seem overwhelmingly empty for a single occupant? Finally, someone voices this concern. I'm reluctant to continue upgrading. Yet without enhancements, the vessel's poor storm resistance prevents deep-sea voyages. Ah, such a dilemma. I share your sentiment. My ship, a blend of wood and iron, exceeds 500 square meters, making daily upkeep a formidable challenge. The worst part is the constant hammering for repairs. It's agonizing, enough to bring tears. Staring at the sea all day, my vision is nearly blurred. Downstairs, stop joking. With snow falling so heavily, your blindness likely stems from snow glare, not the ocean. Truth be told, I think so too. The perpetual snowfall leaves me dizzy. Today's blizzard is so intense, I can barely spot any crates. They're still findable, though. At this temperature, snow melts instantly upon hitting the seawater, but crates remain snow-covered, so any white speck indicates one. White? Gushi pondered this message briefly before typing in the group. Gushi, haven't any of you encountered floating ice? Oh my, we've caught a live expert. No sightings here. For floating ice to form, how frigid must the temperature drop? None here either. It's just snowing. Gushi glanced at her thermometer, now reading 18, and shared her current sea temperature. Gushi, it's 18 here. Sister Shi, where are you located? That's astonishing. Mine is only 4. Mine's 5. I'm at 0. Upstairs. That's not fair. Why are you lingering at 0? Is this the time for such remarks? Though we're all aware of the cold, why such vast disparities in temperature? Gushi reflected on the shared readings, finding the significant gaps unusual. Disasters typically unfold uniformly. Even with regional variations, they shouldn't differ this drastically. Setting aside oceanic factors, the only plausible explanation she could conceive was a unique geographical phenomenon. The seismic activities near volcanic islands, eruptions, and past encounters with fiery isles. all release energies capable of altering the surroundings. Thus, it's highly probable she stumbled upon another extraordinary circumstance this time. Gushi closed the light screen, narrowing her eyes at the increasingly dense floating ice. According to messages from Zone 2333, the original freezing temperatures had not been this severe. The extreme cold she now faced was closely linked to the ice flows. Based on the current course, the sea ahead was almost certainly covered in ice. But this frozen expanse wasn't due to the frost disaster. It had been caused by other factors. At this thought, a faint smile touched Gushi's lips from the present situation. The treasure site couldn't be far off. Although sharks don't typically hibernate, their movements had slowed as the temperature dropped, causing the future to advance at a sluggish pace. She could have had the Shark King and the octopus propel the ship with their strength, but their speed was so swift that the vessel would outpace the sharks, leaving them unable to keep up. If the distance between the ship and the fish grew too great, there was a risk of losing contact. So she had to maintain a speed that matched the shark's towing pace. The future drifted leisurely across the ice-strewn sea as she retreated to her cabin to train her psychic abilities. By evening, when she awoke, the ship had entered an icy plain under a clear, nearly windless sky. She hurried out, gazing at the boundless ice field. The crimson glow of the setting sun scattered across the frozen surface, casting a reddish hue that accentuated the surrounding silence, stirring a sense of unease. Where were the fish? Where had all her fish gone? Chapter 190. An accident on the ice rink. Hey, Shark 1 to Shark 100, where are you? Gushi cupped her hands and shouted across the ice. Not a single one of her towing fish was in sight. Moreover, no fish could be seen in the water. Only the octopus, which usually stayed aboard, remained by her side. She extended her psychic senses downward, only to find them blocked by the ice, unable to penetrate further. If not for knowing they were at sea, she might have mistaken this ice field for land. So, when and how had her ship entered this frozen expanse? With a sigh, Gushi decided to first assess the ice's thickness. She gingerly placed one foot on the surface, gradually increasing pressure until sure it wouldn't collapse, and stepped fully onto the ice. Summoning a sharp spike, she drove it forcefully into the ice, producing a crack that spiderwebbed outward. With another thrust, she broke open a basin-sized hole. Judging by the thickness, the ice wasn't excessively deep, only about 2 meters. Breaking through to continue the journey wouldn't be too difficult. Crouching down, Gushi released her psychic energy to search for her fish, while the octopus sat beside her, its dark, curious eyes fixed on the hole. Her psychic senses spread downward through the ice, sweeping the area to discover all the fish trapped beneath the thick layer, unable to emerge. As for the other marine creatures, Gushi learned through communication that although they could emerge, the ice layer obstructed their psychic senses, preventing them from locating the future. Fearing that breaking through the ice might capsize the vessel, they remained obediently beneath the frozen surface. Upon confirming the safety of all the fish, Gushi designated a specific spot and instructed the octopus to shatter the ice, rescuing the ordinary sharks. The octopus enlarged itself, raised a tentacle, and with a resounding crack, created a massive hole in the ice, through which the sharks slowly swam. Witnessing this scene, Gushi felt a twinge of concern. In their current state, the sharks would find it nearly impossible to continue towing the ship, let alone retrieve any crates. Since the appearance of floating ice, the number of crates had dwindled gradually, and upon entering the ice field, not a single one remained. She surmised that the crates were likely blocked by the icy expanse. Consequently, the responsibility for navigating the vessel now fell upon the marine creatures. Gushi promptly began assigning tasks. The octopus would use its fire element cannon to clear a path, while the other creatures would remove obstructive ice blocks. The Shark King would employ its innate abilities to guide and inspire the sharks in towing the ship, simultaneously bearing the crucial duty of pushing it from behind. Returning aboard, Gushi's first action was to adjust the fire element cannon's alignment. For safety's sake, she retained half of the fire essence, and with a newly reconstructed deck made from materials with temperature-regulating properties, there was no fear of another fire outbreak. Once the cannon was repositioned, the octopus attached itself to it. The Shark King took its place at the stern, and the luminous ray and pearl fish gnawed away at the ice, connecting the breached hole to the area beneath the ship. With all preparations complete, they awaited Gushi's command. Raising her hand in a gesture, Gushi called out with the commanding presence of a captain. Future, prepare to set sail. Octopus, open fire. The octopus responded with a chirping sound. At her directive, it pulled the control lever with a snap, and the fire element cannon began gathering energy. A blast of energy shot forth, aimed not at a specific target, but in the intended direction, instantly melting the thick ice with its intense heat. Although the melting was not entirely thorough, with a bit of additional clearing by the marine creatures, navigation would proceed unhindered. As the energy dissipated in the distance, the luminous ray and pearl fish surged forward to carve out a path along its trajectory. Through their collective efforts, a long, flowing waterway was swiftly carved into the previously uniform ice surface. At that moment, the Shark King activated its innate skill, directing the sharks to pull the ship forward while it itself propelled the Future from behind. Though the Future appeared to be a solitary vessel on the surface, beneath lurked a school of fish. The ship's progress was not swift, but Gushi felt content. For advancing in such an environment was an impossibility for most people at present. Among all the tasks, the Shark King's was the most arduous, requiring it not only to push the ship but also to continuously expend psychic energy. Despite its B-level psychic prowess, it could not sustain such exertion indefinitely. Thus, Gushi mandated a 2-hour rest for the fish after every 2 hours of travel. Thus, amidst arduous navigation, they finally reached the sea area with thicker ice layers. The increasingly dense ice signified even greater difficulties in advancing. Now, the Future had sailed into a region where even the sea beasts struggled to break through the ice, forcing Gushi to halt temporarily and devise alternative strategies. In the frigid zones of Mercury, ice layers could reach a thickness of 1,000 meters. Before witnessing it herself, she had no tangible concept of such ice, but now, having experienced it firsthand, she truly understood the immense challenges of sailing in these extreme cold regions. Gushi glanced at the current temperature, which had plummeted to minus 32 degrees, yet she remained unaware of how low the temperature could drop at her destination. Helplessly, she instructed the sea beasts to clear the ice around the vessel to allow the sharks to surface for air. Upon receiving the command, the fish began pounding the ice with resounding thuds. Standing on the 3rd floor, Gushi gazed into the distance, hoping to catch a glimpse of something different. She scanned her surroundings. To the east, nothing. To the west, nothing. To the south, nothing. But to the north, her vision was exceptionally sharp now. She spotted a tiny black dot moving in a zigzag pattern at an astonishing speed. In just a few moments, the dot grew larger. Her crimson gaze did not activate, leaving her uncertain whether it was friend or foe. So she refrained from probing with her psychic abilities and relied solely on her eyes to monitor the dot's movements. It darted swiftly across the ice, gliding and twirling as if enjoying a leisurely skate, radiating pure delight. Witnessing such joy lifted Gushi's spirits. However, in an instant, an unexpected mishap occurred. The black dot slipped and plunged into the sea. The water, of course, came from the area she and her fish had cleared. At the moment of the accident, Gushi couldn't bear to watch and covered her eyes with her hand. She had indeed broken the ice. But the little dot should have been more mindful of its surroundings while skating. This, she thought, is the consequence of not paying attention. Should she venture out to rescue the dot? But something capable of skating here likely had no fear of water, perhaps even being a denizen of the deep sea. As Gushi's mind wandered with these thoughts, she waited a while, but saw no sign of the dot resurfacing. Her heart pounding with uncertainty, she decided to investigate. Suddenly, the crimson gaze above her head flared brightly, and the Future began to shake violently. Warning, warning, your vessel is under attack. Shield integrity at 8. Hearing the alarm, Gushi nearly lost her breath. Now, there was no need to investigate further. She had to address the immediate threat first. Chapter 191. The allure of fish feed. With a thunderous crash, a bizarre and swift figure erupted from the sea, soaring into the sky. Gushi's sharp eyes tracked the entity as it shifted directions mid-air, changing positions 7 or 8 times in the blink of an eye. So fast, and the force with which it had struck the Future was immense. With such swift movements, Gushi could scarcely track them with her naked eye. Only by channeling her mental energy did she barely manage to keep pace with the entity's velocity. Then came another resounding thud as the figure crashed onto the ice hundreds of meters away, instantly shattering the frozen surface upon impact. Gushi assumed a defensive stance, while the surrounding sea creatures poised themselves for action. How dare you mar this flawless ice with holes? The telepathic message echoed in Gushi's mind, leaving her momentarily bewildered. Was this the same tiny black speck that had plummeted earlier? Though seething with rage, the being restrained itself from further assault. From a distance, it had appeared as a mere dot, but up close, Gushi discerned its peculiar form, an oval-shaped body adorned with limbs, hands devoid of fingers and feet resembling those of a duck, all covered in icy blue scales that were gradually shifting to a crimson hue. Transparent, crystalline wings extended from its sides, which Gushi had observed earlier, enabling the small sphere to glide effortlessly over the sea without sinking. Its rotund physique was complemented by gem-like compound eyes, and atop its head swayed two tendrils, each tipped with glowing orbs that wobbled in its agitated state. Despite the gravity of the situation, Gushi couldn't suppress a chuckle. She couldn't be blamed, for the meter-tall creature bore an uncanny resemblance to a fantastical penguin. Coupled with its juvenile voice and the comical memory of it slipping and plunging into the water while skating, she surmised this chubby sphere must belong to a whimsical race. Foolish human, what are you laughing at? Without any disguise, Gushi was instantly recognized. She speculated it was a denizen of the deep sea. Though incensed, the little sphere refrained from attacking, allowing Gushi to discreetly check its racial affinity. Deep Sea Abyssal Scale Clan, Favorability, 10. Perplexed, Gushi tilted her head. Despite its evident fury, why did the favorability remain positive? Could it be a case of humorous tsundere behavior? Attempting a mental reply, she inquired. I saw you fall into the water earlier. Are you all right? Nonsense. I didn't fall. I intended to dive. You have no idea how formidable we abyssal scale beings are. The outburst was immediate, yet Gushi noted the favorability had risen by another 5 points. Had she not seen the increase, she would have expected an imminent attack. Moreover, as the favorability climbed, the crimson glare above its head persisted, leaving her to wonder, would it strike or not? And why did it keep chattering incessantly? Was it simply loquacious? This was the first time Gushi had encountered such a situation, leaving her rather perplexed. Both sides remained in a stalemate, neither making the first move. It seemed as though each understood the other's reluctance to escalate the conflict, yet neither was willing to abandon their aggressive stance. Just then, an octopus emerged from nowhere. Darting to the side of the little chubby sphere, it gently tapped the sphere with one of its tentacles and then offered it something. What? The little sphere trembled slightly, its attention fixed solely on Gushi aboard the vessel, oblivious to the octopus that it stealthily approached, being highly sensitive to hostility. The sphere was easily approached by the non-threatening octopus. Chirp, chirp. For you. The octopus chirped cheerfully. Using her psychic senses, Gushi realized it was holding fish food. But why would the octopus give fish food to the little sphere? Was it inviting it to a meal? Offering a snack? Making amends? Or perhaps attempting to tame it? She had long wondered if fish food could be used to nurture deep-sea creatures. Could this be the moment her wish came true? Gushi remained composed, quietly observing the unfolding scene. Seeing the little sphere still unmoved, the octopus prodded it again with the tentacle holding the fish food. I don't want it. Chirp, chirp. It's delicious. The little sphere remained still. Growing impatient, the octopus, failing to persuade, tore open the fish food packet and popped a piece into its own mouth. The aromatic fish food held an irresistible allure for fish, and even non-fish creatures could enjoy it as a snack. Watching the octopus eat with gusto, the little sphere emitted a soft, gurgling sound. Then, with its fingerless hands, it reached into its pocket and began sharing the fish food with the octopus. Delicious. Chirp, chirp. I didn't lie, did I? Gushi watched them in disbelief, never imagining that an intelligent species would willingly take the bait. If this were the case, could she simply auction off fish food at a low price and effortlessly recruit a multitude of fish without any effort? After a few bites, the little sphere and the octopus had become fast friends. Following a brief exchange, even the crimson glare above its head faded away. Checking the racial affinity meter, Gushi noted that within minutes, the favorability had risen to 30. So easily fooled. Yet, it wasn't a bad outcome. Since the other party harbored no ill intent, there was no need for a fierce battle. Moreover, if they enjoyed the fish food, why not let them indulge a bit more? It was the perfect opportunity to test her earlier hypothesis. Observing that the octopus and the little sphere had finished their snack, Gushi seized the moment to communicate. I have more tasty treats here. consider it an apology. The little sphere, still savoring the experience, pondered for a moment before agreeing. Gushi refrained from mentioning boarding the ship, and little Chubby, harboring reservations, had no intention of doing so either. Thus, the octopus took on the role of laborer, following Gushi's instructions to return to the vessel and retrieve 100 bags of fish feed for little Chubby. Overjoyed, the creature's luminous tendrils glowed brightly as it poured packet after packet into its mouth, devouring half the supply in one go. Regrettably, even such a substantial quantity failed to trigger a binding notification. Gushi felt a pang of disappointment. Since the fish-raising system hadn't indicated that the other party wasn't a fish, it implied they were indeed one. Yet, the absence of a binding notice suggested either insufficient consumption of fish feed or the possibility that deep-sea races couldn't be bound at all. Ding! Just as Gushi's hopes waned, the fish-raising system finally stirred to life. Chapter 192, Fish-Raising System Update. Gushi's eyes lit up. Was the binding imminent? The fish-raising system is now undergoing an upgrade. Please wait. System upgrade in progress. 5 minutes later, system upgrade complete. New features? Gushi glanced at little Chubby, still munching on fish feed, and reopened the system with curiosity. What was once limited to taming, raising, and list interfaces now displayed a fresh panel. Switching to it, a prompt emerged. Fish raising tip. Your good friend greatly enjoys your fish feed. Please treat them to more of it. Note: only abyssal race fish appreciate fish feed. Other species may detest it if they consume any. Note: fish that have eaten fish feed won't attack you unless involved in racial conflicts. If their favorability reaches 100, they might come to your aid in times of danger. After the prompts faded, the new interface's contents unfolded before her. It presented itself in a list format, with the first entry bearing a name. Abyssal Scale Race. Ling Ling. Favorability. 30. Hobbies. Ice skating. Personality. Irritable yet shy. Additionally, a series of functions followed, each requiring a certain level of favorability to unlock. Gushi proceeded to check the requirements for several features. Favorability. 40. Unlocks function. Communication. Description: no matter where the fish is, you can communicate with them through mental energy. Favorability. 60. Unlocks function. Gift giving. Description: the fish considers you a close friend and will present you with a unique gift. Favorability. 80. Unlocks function. Location tracking. Description: you can check the fish's whereabouts at any time. Even vast oceans can't hinder your bond. Favorability. 100. Unlocks function. Summoning. Description: with mutual consent, you can summon the fish to your side. Observing the newly unlocked functions of the fish-raising system, Gushi found it quite modern and adaptive. So, while abyssal race fish couldn't be raised, they could be enticed with fish feed to become fair-weather companions. Moreover, due to the recent system upgrade, she hadn't noticed how many packs of fish feed little Chubby consumed before it was willing to befriend her. Or perhaps, whether a fish is willing to take the bait is actually related to its personality. That is, the feeding rules of the friend system differ from those of taming and feeding. Fish friends do not rely on a fixed amount of fish feed to maintain relationships. Since the fish-raising system does not specify a clear quantity, the possibility of making friends with an indefinite amount of fish feed is quite high. However, little Chubby has already entered the friend list, indicating that it poses no threat to her at all. Given this, she should seize the moment to quickly boost the affection level. Gushi, without any hostility, glided over the sharp spikes to approach little Chubby. Sure enough, little Chubby did not reject her proximity. Gushi, what is your name? Little Chubby. I'm Ling Ling. Gushi understood inwardly. The name indeed matched the friend information in the fish-raising system. Gushi, I'm Gushi. Would you like to visit my ship? I have many delicious treats and fun things. Little Chubby, munching on fish feed, paused briefly, neither refusing nor agreeing. After a moment's thought, it continued. Earlier, there was a red glow on your ship, full of hostility. Gushi, you're quite perceptive. That red light appeared because you were hostile, so it lit up. The crimson glare was certainly more than just a red light. It must have unique qualities to attract hostility, though Gushi wasn't entirely clear on the specifics. Now, that little Chubby specifically brought up the red light issue. It made Gushi realize that the glow likely emitted a particular form of animosity. Seeing little Chubby remain silent, Gushi pressed on persuasively. Look, the red light is gone now, which shows I mean you no harm, right? I apologize for breaking the ice earlier and causing you to fall into the water, but you also cursed at me and damaged my ship. Let's call it even. Little Chubby snorted haughtily, putting on a fierce front as it declared, "Fine, I'll forgive you then, but don't let it happen again." In truth, Little Chubby had sneaked out without telling its family and stumbled upon this vast, icy plain. Such expansive ice fields are hard to come by, so it wanted to practice its skating skills. It had been enjoying itself immensely until, caught off guard, it fell into the water. Although deep-sea creatures aren't afraid of water, the incident was quite disappointing. Originally, it intended to teach this human a lesson, but since she offered food, it reluctantly decided to pardon her. However, aren't humans supposed to be weak? Why does she not seem that feeble? Innocent Little Chubby voiced the thought directly from its mind. Little Chubby, aren't you humans supposed to be weak? You don't look too bad. This question piqued Gooshy's curiosity. How do you know I'm human? And why do you say I'm not weak? Little Chubby replied matter-of-factly, during my travels, I've seen abyssal races that enjoy keeping humans as pets. Though the humans I've encountered were weak, you can raise so many sea creatures. You must be quite capable and wealthy. Well, Gooshy felt there was no fitting response to Little Chubby's remark. She then shifted the topic, asking, you mentioned traveling abroad? Aren't you concerned about potential dangers? Though her words were laced with care and curiosity, to Little Chubby, they sounded like an implication of weakness. Instantly, the little one took offense. With a flare of anger, Little Chubby retorted, let's fight. Then you'll see how formidable I am. Gooshy promptly declined, unwilling to expend energy on such a pointless endeavor with no tangible benefits. Indeed, even the most amicable of the deep-sea races harbored a combative nature at their core. If conflicts didn't arise, it was merely because the stakes weren't high enough. Yet, an idea sparked in her mind, a way to boost Little Chubby's favor. Gooshy proposed, what's the fun in fighting? You seem to adore skating. Why don't we have a friendly match? She had observed Little Chubby's skating earlier, noting it relied solely on speed with little grace. Although Gooshy herself wasn't skilled in skating, she had a whole community of humans backing her up, ready to offer tips. If she won, she could teach Little Chubby to skate, deepening their bond. If she lost, given Little Chubby's pride, the little one would surely revel in the victory, still enhancing their rapport. Either way, it promised a win-win outcome. As expected, at the mention of skating, Little Chubby's spirits soared. Exactly, fighting is dull. True prowess lies in skating. Gooshy mentally cheered, exchanged a few more words, and escorted Little Chubby aboard the ship. The icy surface on the deck sent the little one into a frenzy of excitement the moment it stepped on. Without needing any encouragement, Little Chubby immediately took to gliding across the ice. Chapter 193. Preparations for skating. The key distinction between the deep-sea races and sea beasts lies in their innate traits. From birth, deep-sea individuals possess significantly higher spiritual energy and greater potential for intellectual growth. Their sense of self is profoundly strong. Even seemingly unremarkable members like Little Chubby should not be underestimated. For instance, as Little Chubby now slid back and forth on the deck with webbed feet, its chaotic movements somehow avoided all obstacles, allowing it to relish the unique sensation of skating on ice with effortless ease. Gooshy watched as Little Chubby, tilting a non-existent neck in ecstasy, spun and moved simultaneously, arms raised high as if attempting an ice ballet. But with its spherical form, the spinning resembled more of a rolling tumble. She shook her head in disbelief, finding it hard to reconcile the adorable ball before her with the majestic title of the Abyssal Scale Race. She tried calling out to Little Chubby several times, but received no response. Resigned, Gooshy retreated to her cabin. Since the little one was utterly absorbed and unlikely to cause trouble, she decided to let it enjoy itself. This gave her the perfect opportunity to gather some relevant information. Though not all-powerful, the ever-useful regional chat channel 2333 would come to her aid once again. Rubbing her hands together in anticipation, Gooshy opened channel 23333 and promptly posted a message. In District 2333, the regional chat group, 9924-710-0000 Goo, she urgently sought advice on ice skating matters, promising generous rewards for exceptional suggestions. The nature of the reward would depend on the effectiveness and how much she could extract from Little Chubby, believing that incentives attract quality contributions. As expected, her message instantly sparked lively discussions in the chat. Amidst the flood of irrelevant chatter, Gooshy activated her mental and visual filtering technique, a newly acquired skill ideal for rapid information processing under pressure. By focusing her mental energy on her eyes and setting keywords to bridge vision and cognition, she could automatically capture relevant details while discarding the rest. However, this method had flaws. Keywords might not always be precise, and fragmented messages posed challenges in interpretation. Sighing, she spotted a relevant detail. Ice skating? I'm not an expert, but those figure skaters' outfits are absolutely stunning. Gucci immediately noted the emphasis on attire, recalling the adage that clothes make the man, and for deep-sea beings, their aesthetic preferences, though distinct from humans, were evident from trade and auction lists. She mentally bookmarked the clothing aspect for later consideration and gave a silent like to the contributor. Soon, a more useful message appeared. Ice skating? I can do it, but I lack the equipment. Gucci felt a twinge of embarrassment as she couldn't provide tools, but remembered little Chubby skating without any. She replied, without equipment. Can you demonstrate the moves? The response came, yes, with improved attributes, I can control my body even on a deck. Recalling her own near slips on her ship, Gucci questioned her coordination but was reassured by the offer. She promptly checked the user's profile and sent a friend request. Meanwhile, Lu Man, casually browsing the 2333 channel, noticed the rare sight of regional expert Gucci seeking help, a departure from her usual role of assisting others, now inquiring about ice skating tips. She too was a seasoned resident of District 2333. From the incident of using plastic buckets for shelter from rain to the medicine-related event. Although she had indirectly received numerous favors from Gucci, they had never directly interacted. Now that the other party needed assistance, she was still willing to lend a hand. As soon as she posted the message in the regional channel, Gucci's friend request arrived. Startled for a moment, she promptly accepted it. Within mere seconds of becoming friends, Gucci directly initiated a voice call. Lu Man smiled inwardly, sensing the other's evident urgency. Upon answering, Gucci cut straight to the point. Gu Elf, hello, Luman. I need your help. Lu Man, just now I noticed you were inquiring about ice skating moves. Is that what this is about? Gucci, yes. If you have any ideas regarding attire, feel free to share them as well. Lu Man did not immediately agree, aware that the task was far from simple. She promptly inquired about the method. Gucci had already prepared for this and replied swiftly, I possess an item called the Sea Shadow Stone, which functions similarly to a camera. I will send it to you. Once you record the footage, return it to me. For details on the Sea Shadow Stone, refer to Chapter 94. Such items, Gucci was willing to trade, but others might not be inclined to purchase them. Given her pressing need, she had no choice but to place tentative trust in the other party. Lu Man was somewhat taken aback and cautiously probed. Aren't you afraid I might take the stone and not fulfill the task? Gucci's voice lowered, turning colder and carrying a hint of danger. Would you? Lu Man replied honestly, I'm not sure. I wouldn't now, but I can't guarantee that upon seeing the item, I wouldn't be tempted. After all, human flaws can surface unpredictably. This response was a first for Gucci, yet such self-awareness suggested a higher degree of reliability. Such individuals were far preferable to those who boastfully claim unwavering morality and proclaim themselves as paragons of virtue. As the ancient adage goes, if you suspect someone, do not employ them. If you employ them, do not suspect them. Since she had decided to collaborate with Lu Man, it was only right to extend a measure of trust. After a brief moment of contemplation, Gucci responded, I trust you. However, regarding the compensation, I cannot specify the amount just yet, but I assure you won't labor in vain. If you agree, I will send the Sea Shadow Stone to you. Lu Man readily consented. For her, recording a set of ice skating moves would only take over 10 minutes. Yet, the true benefit lay in seizing this opportunity to establish a connection with Gucci. They ended the call, and without further ado, Gucci dispatched the Sea Shadow Stone. In just over 10 minutes, Lu Man returned it. Upon opening it, Gucci found that a complete set of ice skating moves had indeed been recorded inside. After reviewing the footage, she was about to message Lu Man when the latter beat her to it. Lu Man, I have already started working on the attire design. I can draft the blueprints, but actual production will require some effort. Reading Lu Man's reply, Gucci was taken aback. She had initially thought securing the ice skating moves was satisfactory enough, never expecting the other to also tackle the clothing aspect. What a remarkable talent. Chapter 194. Skating requires attire. Seizing such an opportunity, Gucci naturally offered her full support to Lu Man's creative endeavors. She promptly replied, instructing Lu Man to send over the finalized designs so she could procure the necessary materials. After exchanging a few more details, Gucci closed the chat with her friend, brimming with enthusiasm. Now that she had obtained the first item to boost favorability, her immediate priority was to put it to use. Gushi checked the racial affinity level, which remained at 30, yet within the fish-rearing system, the little chubby sphere's favorability had already reached 35. This discrepancy suggested two possibilities. Either the little sphere held an exceptionally unique status among the abyssal scale tribe, significant enough to influence the entire clan's disposition, or the abyssal scales inherently harbored a higher baseline affinity toward humans. Closing the favorability interface, Gushi descended the stairs. Despite the rapid progress, she knew better than to let her guard down. The high favorability with the sea wraiths stemmed from leveraging their two defining traits, a love for wealth and bones. However, the characteristics of the abyssal scale tribe remained elusive to her. For now, she could only rely on the fish-rearing system's prompts to enhance the little sphere's goodwill. As soon as Gushi reached the lower floor, the little chubby sphere rolled over, showing off with a spin before halting proudly in front of her and asking, "Well, how's my skill?" Gushi wasn't one for insincere flattery, but she excelled at diverting conversations. Calmly, she sidestepped the sphere, seated herself on a nearby storage chest to match its height, and declared, "I've brought you something special." Aware of the abrupt shift, she infused her tone with an air of mystery. Whether the little sphere would detect, it was uncertain, but aligning her actions, expressions, and delivery was crucial for a smooth transition. The little sphere tilted its head, its interest waning. Yet, Gushi refused to give up and dropped the keyword, skating. Instantly, the sphere's curiosity was piqued. It had been in the midst of enjoying its skating session when it noticed the human who brought it aboard had vanished. Fearing a broken promise, it was now intrigued to learn she had been preparing something. But the proud little sphere wouldn't admit to being captivated. With a disdainful huff, it retorted, "Skating? I bet you're not as good as me." Despite its words, its eyes remained fixed on the shadow, sea stone, Gushi produced. Gushi smiled without responding, moving the stone left and right, the little sphere's gaze following intently. Suddenly amused by the creature's antics, she twirled the stone in circles, watching as its eyes traced the motion. She knew better than to point it out. Sometimes, ignorance is bliss. Clearing her throat deliberately, Gushi snapped the sphere out of its trance, its scales flushing red with embarrassment. She thought to herself, well, this time it's genuinely annoyed. Fishing requires bait. And now the figure skating movements within the sea shadow stone serve as the ultimate lure. Gushi promptly activated the sea shadow stone, projecting a virtual image into the air. The little chubby sphere scales had reverted to their original hue, its eyes fixated unwaveringly on the unfolding display. The scene depicted artistic and graceful figure skating routines, yet Gushi, utterly unversed in such matters, could only discern it as figure skating. She stole a sidelong glance at the little sphere, noticing its excitement causing the orbs on its tendrils to shimmer with light. Its gaze remained glued to Luman's movements, twirling and leaping, utterly captivated and unwilling to look away. Soon, the footage concluded, but the little sphere remained immersed in Luman's performance. Seizing its dazed state, Gushi covertly checked the fish-rearing system's affinity level. Excellent. A single skating session had boosted it to 45 points, far exceeding expectations. In her heart, Gushi gave Luman a thumbs up. The novel maneuvers had left the little sphere astounded. It had never witnessed such splendid artistry. It yearned to learn, having observed intently. It noted that the human in the sea shadow stone differed from the one before it. Yet this skill must be uniquely human. Instantly, the little sphere's regard for Gushi shifted, tinged with a subtle respect. Feigning ignorance of its altered demeanor, Gushi enhanced the bait, proclaiming, "This skating technique is a crystallization of human ingenuity. Quite impressive, isn't it?" Though inwardly eager, the little sphere remained stubborn, retorting half-heartedly, "It's passable. If I mastered it, I'd surely outshine that." Gushi was taken aback by its audacity. Despite its rotund form, it harbored grand aspirations. Yet, with such a physique, many moves would be unfeasible. Clearing her throat, she swiftly changed the subject. Actually, when humans perform this art, they don exquisite attire, enhancing the beauty of the glide. Hearing the term clothes for the first time, the little sphere was perplexed and inquired curiously, "Or clothes?" Stumped, Gushi hesitated, then explained, "Clothes? They're what I'm wearing." She pointed to her own garments, then glanced at the sphere's scales. This prompted a recollection of her encounters with deep-sea races and auction venues. She had never seen deep-sea beings or marine creatures clad in attire. So were they all? Bordershined? The realization shocked her. What a bizarre discovery. Mentally, she conjured an invisible hand to dispel the odd imagery. Despite Gushi's tangible demonstration, the concept remained abstract to the little sphere. It eyed her drab clothing with disdain, finding it unappealing compared to its own shimmering scales. Its contempt was palpable, prompting Gushi to salvage the situation. By the way, she interjected, do you know about pearlfish? It was the exceptionally beautiful pearl fish, along with the shimmering ray. Little chubby ball first nodded, then shook its head. It knew of the pearl fish, but had never seen a shimmering ray. Upon hearing this, Gushi promptly gathered the fish and addressed little chubby ball. Do you find them attractive? Little chubby ball glanced at the exquisite fish, then at itself, unable to bring itself to deny their beauty. So it merely buzzed, they're all right, I suppose. That means you think they're lovely. Gushi understood and continued. The clothing is meant to replicate this effect and adorn you. Little chubby ball was stunned and began to stammer. What? Are you planning to skin them and wear their pelts? Such magnificent sea creatures. It pained little chubby ball deeply. Though many deep-sea dwellers are inherently fierce and combative, it felt that humans could be just as cruel. Gushi was exasperated, finding communication with this little ball utterly draining. She waved a weary hand and clarified, no, it's imitation, mere imitation. Just tell me, will you wear it or not? Relieved that it wasn't about flaying the fish alive, little chubby ball eagerly blurted, I will. Chapter 195. Human business opportunities. To express her friendship, Gushi directly gifted the sea shadow stone to little chubby ball. Then, using the clothing matter as a pretext, she persuaded it to stay on the ship for a few days. Truthfully, Gushi and little chubby ball didn't quite get along. The latter was quite boisterous, while Gushi preferred tranquility. However, the octopus and little chubby ball quickly became close friends. Thus, Gushi legitimately delegated the task of hosting little chubby ball to the octopus. To enhance their playtime, the octopus even transformed into a size similar to little chubby ball's. Thrilled to have made a new friend, little chubby ball enthusiastically led the octopus to learn ice skating together. And so, the two spherical beings rolled gleefully across the deck, thoroughly enjoying themselves. Meanwhile, hours later, Luman sent the freshly completed clothing designs to Gushi, not well-versed in such matters. Gushi simply used another sea shadow stone to send Luman a video of little chubby ball and the octopus skating. The endeavor of creating garments required careful consideration. If only little chubby ball received new attire, the octopus would surely throw a fit upon finding out. It would be like an adult buying candy for the neighbor's child while neglecting their own. As for the styles, whether she reviewed them or not made little difference. As long as they were passable, even if little chubby ball disliked them, they could always produce several sets until one met its fancy. Gushi conveyed her thoughts to Luman, who took her words as a direct order. After a brief discussion, Gushi headed to the trading area to gather various attractive fabrics. Soon after, Luman received a substantial supply of materials. Having been a professional figure skater previously, Luman had a keen eye for apparel and had crafted numerous outfits herself, so she handled the task with ease. From the sea shadow stone provided by Gushi, she learned that the client's physique was remarkably spherical, which simplified the clothing-making process even further. Amidst the bustling activities of training and play, time swiftly flowed to the 60th day of the sea calendar. At noon, Luman dispatched the garments Gushi had requested, which she then delivered to Little Chubby and Octopus. Little Chubby, adorned with blue scales, was gifted a sailor-style dress in white and blue crafted by Luman, while Octopus received an adorable t-shirt featuring a cute octopus design. Though they accepted the attire, they were clueless about wearing it, so under Gushi's guidance, they managed to dress themselves. As Gushi observed the little ones in their new outfits, a peculiar question arose in her mind, particularly regarding Little Chubby, who was sporting a dress. She wondered aloud, is it male or female? Adjusting the tiny dress, she inquired curiously. Little Chubby stared at her in astonishment and replied, you humans are so strange. We all emerge from eggs. What do you mean by male or female? Gushi pressed on, where did your egg come from then? Little Chubby answered simply, from home. Of course. Gushi probed further. Don't you have parents? Little Chubby responded with confusion. What are parents? I don't understand what you're saying. The conversation devolved into a clash of physiological and cultural disparities. leaving both parties baffled by each other's perspectives. Gushi ultimately concluded that little Chubby had no gender, and she dismissed the question of reproduction with a laugh, reasoning that as a non-scholar, it wasn't her concern to delve into such matters. Little Chubby, meanwhile, lifted the hem of its dress with its hands. Despite the inferior material, it took pride in the appealing design and, donning the outfit, raised its head proudly, declaring, "This fish skin is quite nice. Mine looks better than Octopus's." Upon hearing this, Octopus grew displeased. Initially content with its own attire, it felt slighted by the comparison and flushed with anger. However, unable to challenge little Chubby, it could only seethe in silent frustration. Gushi ignored little Chubby's reference to the clothing as fish skin and discreetly checked the affection meter in her fish-raising system. To her surprise, a single garment had boosted the affection level to 50 points, bringing her closer to the threshold for gift-giving. She mused that to win over the little ones, she must be willing to invest, offering more outfits, as children often delight in dress-up games and themed gift sets. Moreover, with sufficient bait laid earlier, she speculated that little Chubby, now enamored with the clothes, might be inclined to make a purchase. Seizing the moment of high spirits, Gushi encouraged, "This little dress is just a small sample. If you like it, there are many more styles available." Entranced by its first experience with fish skin, little Chubby spun around, causing the dress to twirl into a circle, which only heightened its excitement. In a burst of enthusiasm, it retrieved its pocket money, laying out all the coins on the ground and counting them meticulously. Gushi couldn't help but marvel inwardly. "Forgive my lack of foresight. I never expected these deep-sea creatures to be so honorable, willingly offering payment." After tallying its wealth, little Chubby announced a total of 28 gold coins and 245 silver coins. With meticulous organization, she separated 10 gold coins and declared to Gushi, "I wish to purchase fish skin." Gushi was well aware that the deep-sea tribe's market prices were lower than those in human society. Yet the little dresses were uniquely human creations and thus could not be priced too cheaply. However, the cost of materials for crafting garments varied, making a uniform price impossible. As for setting the exact rates, she needed to consult Lu Man. After all, the deep-sea tribe were amicable neighbors, and for the sake of long-term harmony, Gushi had no intention of exploiting them. She did not accept the money immediately, instead stating, "I must inquire further about the price of the little dress. I will inform you once I have the details." The chubby sphere waved its hands in a penguin-like gesture, signaling agreement. Only after the little sphere and the octopus resumed their playful antics did Gushi retreat indoors to contact Lu Man once more. Initially, she had merely aimed to foster goodwill and receive the gift from the chubby sphere, but inadvertently, she seemed to have uncovered a business opportunity for humanity. The quality of materials likely held little significance in the eyes of the deep-sea tribe, given their inherent strength, but beauty was a different matter, a luxury, in fact. After all, what luxury item is known for durability? They are often disposable. Moreover, she had caught a glimpse of the chubby sphere's wealth, which by deep-sea standards was quite substantial. If it possessed a sea trust card, the balance was probably considerable. Lu Man had been awaiting Gushi's message. Although Gushi had provided the fabric for the previous garments, Lu Man had invested considerable time in their creation. From the context of the earlier Sea Shadowstone incident, she deduced that Gushi was engaged in some form of trade with the deep-sea tribe. If these dealings prospered, Lu Man stood to gain significantly as well. She was not short-sighted, aware of both humanity's current challenges and the insights continually revealed in New World. She knew she must strive harder to acquire resources and bolster her strength. This presented a perfect opportunity, as she worked on crafting another little dress from the remaining fabric. Gushi's call came through. Lu Man promptly answered, hearing Gushi's voice on the other end. Chapter 196, The Allure of Fish Skin. Gushi. "Hello. The little dress has been delivered, and the customer is very pleased." Receiving confirmation, Lu Man felt a surge of joy. At least her initial step had succeeded. Suppressing her excitement, she inquired, "Sis, you're not just here to share this news, are you?" "Gushi, the customer wants various types of clothing, as long as the styles differ. They've offered 10 gold coins as payment. This could develop into a long-term venture. I'll facilitate the connection. How about a 10 commission?" Gushi was concise, laying out her terms directly. In human society, Lu Man might have deemed a 10 fee excessive, but in the New World, Gushi's ability to consistently link her with deep-sea tribe members desiring such attire was a remarkable skill. Those with such talents deserve higher compensation. Without hesitation, Luman replied, "Thank you, I accept this business." Gushi acknowledged with a soft hum and continued. "The other party is a deep-sea tribe that remains relatively amicable toward humans. If possible, we should strive to enhance interspecies goodwill. You understand, don't you?" Luman replied, "Of course. I will charge appropriately. The previous little dress was a sample. I'll set different prices based on the materials used." Luman grasped the underlying implication of Gushi's words. In this perilous world, securing one more ally meant one less enemy. Their current endeavors transcended mere profit-making. Gushi stated, "I'll advance you 2 gold coins for material procurement and production." After their conversation ended, Luman promptly received the deposit from Gushi. Gazing out the window, at the chubby little creature frolicking below, Gushi sighed, reclined on the sofa, and resumed her mental discipline training. The little creature was thoroughly enjoying its time on Gushi's vessel, practicing ice skating by day, feeding on fish pellets when hungry, and retiring to a guest room at night. Occasionally, the octopus would offer it assorted snacks, making this vacation utterly delightful. However, one vexation troubled it. Its fish-skin garment had quickly soiled, rendering it unwearable and unsightly. Descending the stairs, Gushi noticed the little one staring wistfully at the nautical-style dress and inquired, "What has captured your attention?" Upon recognizing its friend, the creature gloomily explained, "My fish skin is dirty. I can't wear it anymore." Gushi knelt, picked up the dress, and examined it. The fabric was caked with grime, reminiscent of a kindergarten child tumbling in a sandpit. "But it's merely soiled. That's no cause for concern. A thorough wash will suffice," she reassured. Summoning the octopus, Gushi instructed it to cleanse the garment and hang it in the smelting room to dry. The little creature watched the octopus's actions with curiosity, perplexed, and asked Gushi what was happening. Realizing the creature was unfamiliar with clothing maintenance, Gushi patiently elucidated, "Fish skin can be laundered when dirty, though it requires specific substances for proper cleaning." The little one nodded with partial comprehension, then trailed behind the octopus to observe its labor. It witnessed the octopus immerse the fish skin in water, add an unusual liquid, and vigorously agitate and slap it with its tentacles before rinsing it clean. When the octopus presented the freshly washed garment, the creature was astounded. The once filthy fish skin now appeared pristine. Gushi approached unnoticed and advised, "This type of fish skin is delicate and prone to soiling. Learn from the octopus how to care for it." The little creature nodded in understanding, recalling that beautiful items in its own home were equally fragile and demanded gentle handling. As the little one followed the octopus to hang the garment, Gushi curiously reopened the aquatic system to check the affinity meter. Contemplating this astonishing development, she mused that the little creature's experience ought to boost its fondness as well. As anticipated, little Chubby's favorability rose by another 5 points, now reaching 55, just a whisper away from the coveted 60. Nothing could have brought greater delight. With Luman sending over another outfit, she was confident the favorability would soon be maxed out. Success felt tantalizingly close, and curiosity stirred within her about what reward little Chubby might bestow. Come evening, Gushi received a message from Luman. "Sis she, I've made some subtle adjustments to this set. Besides the dress, I've added small accessories. Let's price it at 1 gold coin." This was the second ensemble Luman had crafted without pause after the first, ensuring a swift delivery. After a brief reply, Gushi retrieved the package and headed toward little Chubby's room. There, the creature sat on the floor with Octopus, both clad in dried navy outfits, munching on fish feed. Upon Gushi's entrance, they turned their heads inquisitively, only to watch her unveil new treasures from the basket. She shook out the dress, a confection of pink and white layers, its voluminous skirt reminiscent of a cake, complete with a tailored bow tie adorned with a tiny bell, perfectly suited to little Chubby's form. With a clatter, little Chubby dropped its fish feed, instantly recognizing the gift. In a gesture of consideration, it wiped its fishy hands on Octopus, mindful of keeping the delicate fabric pristine. Though the feed wasn't overly dirty, crumbs scattered on Octopus's sole garment, provoking a shrill squeal of protest. Just as Gushi braced for a confrontation, little Chubby grandly produced a gold coin, letting it clink to the floor before Octopus. In an instant, the grievance vanished, replaced by a chirp of delight as Octopus flashed a heart symbol, appeased by the compensation. Cleverly, Octopus realized that while its owner provided only one outfit, gold coins could purchase more from Gushi. With the dispute settled, Octopus eagerly assisted in dressing Little Chubby, though they fumbled with the bell-adorned collar until Gooshy stepped in to help. Once adorned, Little Chubby strutted with pride, while Octopus, ever the sycophant, waved its tentacles in enthusiastic support. The gentle jingling of the bell gave Gooshy a foreboding sense that, without sealing her senses, sleep would elude her that night. Her intuition proved accurate. Little Chubby spent the entire evening gleefully sliding across the ship in its new attire. Yet, having blocked her perceptions, Gooshy remained unaware of the nocturnal antics that unfolded. Chapter 197. The Gathering. Let us rewind time to witness what Little Chubby had been up to. To avoid the incessant jingling of Little Chubby's bell in the dead of night, Gooshy deliberately sealed off her 5 senses before slumber. As for whether she feared a nocturnal assault, such concerns were entirely absent. Surrounding the future were sea beasts and the Shark King, with an octopus aboard the vessel. Even in the worst-case scenario of enemies boarding the ship, Little Chubby would undoubtedly intervene. Thus, she had nothing to fret over, allowing herself to drift into peaceful repose. Gooshy pulled the covers over her head and sank into deep sleep, while Little Chubby, clad in its newly acquired fish skin, gleefully skated across the deck. As a deep-sea creature with A-grade psychic abilities, verging on the threshold of S rank, Little Chubby naturally possessed numerous methods to connect with its kin, the Abyssal Scale tribe. Though it had ventured out for amusement, it was not alone but accompanied by fellow tribesmates. The Abyssal Scales, masters of ice manipulation, often harbored a passion for skating. Coinciding with a frigid spell, many of their kind would journey together across the deep seas in search of icy expanses suitable for their pastime. Of course, their tribe did not inhabit these waters. They merely utilized tickets for the Sea Phantom to traverse various oceanic realms. On this occasion, Little Chubby's group consisted of 5 members. Upon discovering this vast ice field, they disembarked from the Sea Phantom, intending to glide upon its surface. The ice plains stretched wide, and coupled with the Abyssal Scale's remarkable speed, the companions gradually drifted apart during their revelry. Yet, such distance meant little to deep-sea beings, who could effortlessly communicate with their kin, bound by shared lineage. They believed in partaking in joys collectively. Hence, after Little Chubby unearthed a treasure, it was only natural to summon its fellow tribesmates to join in the merriment. The Abyssal Scales employed a unique method to reach out to one another, utilizing the 2 spheres on their cranial tendrils. At that moment, the orbs on Little Chubby's appendages emitted a flickering glow, a signal calling its companions. "Chirp, chirp, what are you doing?" inquired the octopus, gazing curiously at Little Chubby. Pointing to the spheres on its head, Little Chubby explained, "With just the 2 of us, it's rather dull. I have a few more friends. I'm inviting them over to play." Though its words suggested simplicity, Little Chubby's proudly raised head betrayed a different sentiment. After speaking, it even jingled the bell around its neck, as if eager to flaunt its splendid fish skin attire. However, the octopus struggled to grasp such nuances. Despite their ability to communicate, one was an intelligent deep-sea being, while the other a sea creature still in need of mental enrichment. That they had forged a friendship was nothing short of miraculous. Originally, Little Chubby had intended to summon its companions during the day, but upon witnessing Gooshy promptly produce a second set of garments, it swiftly abandoned the notion. If the others were summoned during the day, they might also acquire the fish skin, leaving little chance for it to flaunt its prize. But at night, when Gooshy had retired to rest, its companions would have no source for the fish skin and could only gaze enviously as it donned the garment. This thought thrilled the Little Chubby sphere immensely. However, this was Gooshy's vessel, and without her consent, no other deep-sea creatures could board. So, to enjoy a delightful skating session, the Little Chubby sphere employed its psychic abilities to freeze the waters surrounding the future ship. Before long, the companions that had gathered sped swiftly toward the future ship's location. Had Gooshy been present, she would have been astonished to see that these Little Chubby spheres looked nearly identical, differing only slightly in the patterns of their scales and the small orbs on their head tendrils. By now, 4 other Little Chubby spheres stood upon the icy surface, their eyes fixed on Ling Ling aboard the ship. "What are you doing up there? Come down and skate. Why have your scales changed like that? What is this ship? Where did you get it?" In just a few days apart, the companions noticed that their once familiar friend had transformed completely. As if they no longer recognized that the current Ling Ling offered no response to their queries, remaining motionless on the deck. Then, with the assistance of an octopus, A spotlight from a shark pearl illuminated Ling Ling, casting it as the focal point in the darkness, with the future ship serving as its stage. Before the others could grasp its intentions, they watched Ling Ling proudly shake its fish skin and glide across the deck in a skating performance. Its movements flowed with seamless grace and breathtaking elegance, showcasing maneuvers the other spheres had never witnessed, leaving them speechless and frozen in awe on the ice. This routine was mimicked from action seen in a sea shadow stone. Though its physique couldn't replicate the high-difficulty moves of someone like Lumen, it managed to capture the general form. Perhaps to human eyes, its antics might appear comical, but among the Abyssal Scale tribe, they were perceived as sophisticated. After Ling Ling concluded with a spectacular spin, the other little chubby spheres began tapping the ice vigorously with their webbed feet, a unique form of praise among the Abyssal Scale tribe. Akin to human applause after an impressive show, the more intense the stomping, the greater the respect for the performer, prompting them to exert their full strength in appreciation. However, it's important to note that although the little chubby spheres may seem small, they are deep-sea beings, and even the youngest among them possess considerable power. Thus, the ice Ling Ling had frozen with its psychic energy couldn't withstand the stomping of several spheres. As they pounded, the ice emitted continuous cracking sounds. But to avoid plunging into the water, they united their psychic forces to repeatedly refreeze the fracturing surface, breaking and freezing, breaking and freezing. This cycle repeated until the ice layer gradually thickened enough to fully withstand the vigorous stomping of the chubby spheres. Consequently, the future became entirely encased within a dense layer of ice. Through the meticulous efforts of the chubby spheres, the surrounding ice was rendered exceptionally stable, emboldening them to frolic freely upon its surface. As for the new techniques Ling Ling had acquired and the fresh fish skin attire she donned, the other chubby spheres gathered around, eagerly inquiring about their origins. Particularly when Ling Ling produced another fish-skin sailor uniform, the others expressed fervent desires to possess one. Envy was permissible, but gifting the fish skin was out of the question. Ling Ling merely flaunted it, with no intention of parting with it. In just one night, basking in the admiration of her peers, Ling Ling's vanity was immensely gratified to demonstrate her magnanimous nature as a member of the Abyssal Scale tribe. She led her companions in skating across the ice throughout the entire night. By the next day, when Gushi awoke from her dreams and habitually approached the window to survey the surroundings, she suddenly sensed something peculiar about her environment. Chapter 198, The Frozen Waters. Why did it feel strange? In the frigid season and under unique conditions, sea ice formation was normal. But who could explain why, centered around her vessel, a layered structure of ice, seawater, and more ice had formed, resembling a sandwich biscuit? What mystical natural phenomenon was this? This bizarre occurrence prompted Gu Shi to rush downstairs without even attending to her personal hygiene to investigate. Upon descending and extending her psychic awareness, she discovered several spherical figures lying prone on the ice beneath the ship. Their shapes unmistakably identified them as Abyssal Scale tribe members. Yet, who could clarify why several of them had suddenly appeared here, sleeping on the external ice surface? Given their rotund forms, could they even rise from such a position? Sensing the psychic scan, the chubby spheres stirred awake. They swiftly flapped their webbed feet and waved their arms in an odd manner, successfully transitioning from a horizontal to a vertical stance. Thump, 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 thump. The little spheres leaped up, standing uniformly on the ice, their collective gaze fixed upon Gu Shi aboard the ship. Ah, human. Truly, Ling Ling didn't deceive us. We heard she's the one who provided the fish skin. The new techniques are hers as well, but she doesn't appear particularly formidable. What should we do? Should we escort her for a while? If she perishes, we'll lose access to the fish skin. Gu Shi grew increasingly exasperated by their chatter. She inwardly apologized for not seeming impressive and bristled at the implication of her demise, wishing they would speak more auspiciously. As she listened to the Abyssal Scale tribe members chirping below, they remained stationed on the ice without any intention of boarding the vessel. Even as Ling Ling hopped aboard, the other chubby spheres did not follow suit. Ling Ling bounded onto the ship with a cheerful heave-ho and addressed Gu Shi, "My dear friend, would you kindly invite my companions to come aboard as well?" Gu Shi mused. Even though they're from the Deep Sea clan, they're surprisingly polite. Unbeknownst to her, the Yuanian clan's courtesy stemmed from a strict rule among the Deep Sea dwellers. boarding a vessel without the owner's permission was forbidden. Long ago, an arrogant deep-sea being had attempted to board a ship without breaching its defenses, only to be met by automated countermeasures. This incident escalated tensions between the two clans, resulting in countless casualties. Thus, unless they were foes, one should never intrude upon another's ship lightly. Nodding in agreement, Gushi reasoned that hosting one friendly deep-sea being was no different from entertaining a group. Besides, if Lingling had brought along its companions, it must have been content with yesterday's reception. With the ship owner's approval, several plump, spherical creatures clumsily clambered aboard. It was breakfast time. Though uncertain if deep-sea beings partook in morning meals, Gushi needed to eat and hadn't yet freshened up, so she headed indoors. She greeted the little spheres and instructed the octopus to serve them 100 bags of fish feed as hospitality before retreating inside. Since the octopus was occupied with the Yuanin clan, Gushi had to prepare her own breakfast after washing up. She whipped up a simple meal and, while eating, opened the fish-raising system to check the affection levels. After all, consuming the fish feed would add them to her friend list, a significant gain of 5 deep-sea beings at once. Down below, the chubby spheres munched on the feed, steadily boosting their affection metrics. Gushi watched the numbers climb, though she found the Yuanin clan's naming convention peculiar. The first one she encountered was named Lingling, while the others were Yi, Sansan, and Cici, a straightforward sequence that was easy to recall. Yet she struggled to tell them apart. With a deadpan stare at the fluctuating affection levels, she decided it wise to order more outfits. Through her psychic senses, she had noticed the others eyeing Lingling's dress with envy. Slowly finishing her last bite of scrambled egg, Gushi opened her friend list, contacted Lumen, and sent a message. Urgent order. I need 10 sets of various small dresses, along with a 10 gold deposit. On the other end, Lumen was taken aback. Though she had anticipated this business would thrive, she hadn't expected an order for 10 dresses so soon. Having crafted 2 yesterday, she knew that wasn't nearly enough. Moreover, she couldn't dedicate all her time to dressmaking, as she needed to enhance her own abilities. The best solution was to recruit others skilled in sewing. Since joining the game, Lumen had made a few acquaintances, but everyone was too preoccupied with survival to share hobbies. Fortunately, she had previously sought solace and amusement by discussing hobbies with a friend, who happened to be a former fashion designer. Seizing the opportunity, she invited her aboard. Soon, Luman connected with her friend, and they readily agreed to take on the business together. After receiving confirmation from Luman, Gushi felt another weight lifted from her mind. Her current task was to keep the group of abyssal scale beings calm until the new dress was ready. Once she finished her tasks and descended, she found several abyssal scales skating on the deck once more. Gushi mused, they truly adore skating. However, their ability to entertain themselves meant it wouldn't consume much of her time, allowing her to focus on her own affairs. As she approached the chubby little creatures, they waddled over and encircled her. Clearing her throat, she announced, "You're all skating wonderfully, but it's time for the ship to depart. Let's continue skating on board for now. Humans, set sail. Hooray, we get to sail again." Seeing their excited cheers, Gushi nodded with relief, having feared they might resist leaving. Since no one objected, it was time to embark. She summoned the octopus to shatter the surrounding ice and prepare for departure, but it remained motionless, tilting its head at her. "What's wrong?" Gushi inquired, puzzled. "Squeak, it's frozen. I know it's frozen, so break the ice. Today, I'll add an extra fire essence to the cannon. We should still manage to move a bit," she explained patiently. "Squeak, no, it won't break." Gushi watched the octopus's frantic gestures, baffled by its insistence. The outer ice wasn't frozen solid. Why couldn't the ice around the ship be shattered? She then called for the Shark King, only to have the little chubby creatures chatter and gather around again. "Shark, last night, it kept smashing ice over there. Huh, good thing I used my skill to freeze this area solid. Almost slipped and fell into the water." Gushi, did she just hear something alarming? She was struggling to break the ice, yet these little ones had used their abilities to freeze the water beneath her ship, and so firmly that it couldn't be broken. Chapter 199. Farewell gift. So what now? Gushi massaged her forehead in frustration, feeling a throbbing headache. Unaware of the captain's concerns, the little chubby creatures grew curious at her inaction. "Human, why aren't we moving? Let's go." They swarmed around her, urging incessantly. Surrounded and spun about, Gushi wished she could toss them into the sea to cool their heads. Alas, reality dictated that such thoughts remain mere fantasies. Rarely patient, Gushi explained to the chubby little orbs that the ship was frozen in place and couldn't move. Huh? Can't move? Wouldn't it be fine if we just thawed the ice? Just fine? Just fine? Listening to their repetitive chorus, each chubby orb echoing the last, Gushi felt utterly exasperated. If she could melt the ice herself, why would she be standing there idly? At that moment, Lingling, ever perceptive, seemed to sense Gushi's unspoken frustration and stepped forward. We were the ones who froze this ice. We should be responsible for thawing it. Hearing this, Gushi felt a wave of relief. Finally, a deep-sea dweller speaking sense. Truly, the first little orb was a gem. The others chattered noisily for a while, but eventually agreed to work together to melt the ice around the ship. The Yuanlin tribe's psychic abilities excelled in ice manipulation. They could freeze the sea surface just as easily as thaw it, though the latter proved far more cumbersome. Once decided, Gushi watched as the chubby orbs hopped onto the ice one by one, their webbed feet skimming swiftly across the surface. What are they doing? She asked the octopus beside her, who was also spectating. Squeak. No idea. Human and cephalopod fixed their gaze on the ice, where soon the upper layer was carved with several holes by the webbed feet. The orbs then plunged into the holes, leaving only their eyes visible above. Suddenly, Gushi sensed an immense psychic energy emanating from the holes, blanketing the ice, and the frozen blocks encasing the ship began to dissolve. In no time, the ice surrounding the vessel had melted into water. Though the surface had liquefied, Gushi remained uncertain about the conditions beneath the ship, so she dispatched the luminous rays to investigate the underwater ice layer. Quickly, the rays reported back, while a thick layer of ice persisted below. The current water depth no longer impeded navigation. With that issue resolved, Gushi summoned all the chubby orbs aboard and directed the octopus to propel the ship using an enhanced fire element cannon. As the cannon fired, its intense heat transformed the frozen path ahead into navigable waters. The future set sail once more, with the little orbs resuming their ice-skating antics on deck. Now that all problems were addressed, Gushi only needed to await Lumen's delivery of new garments to boost her favor with the chubby orbs. Thus, amidst feasting and frolicking, the group of orbs welcomed the 63rd day on the maritime calendar aboard Gushi's ship. When Gushi laid out the little dresses before them, the orb's eyes sparkled with delight. New fish skin attire. I want to buy this one. I'll take this, it has pearls. 10 dresses were snatched up in an instant, with not a single gold coin spared in payment. Secretly checking her fish-rearing system's favorability meter, Gushi noted that each orb's rating had surpassed 60, though progress beyond that point proved challenging. Sighing with a tinge of regret, she closed the system interface. Gushi, it seems we can only part ways here. The chubby little creatures have been lingering on the ship for several days, and they would have departed earlier if not for the small skirts. Now that they had obtained them, they naturally intended to set off immediately. As they prepared to leave, Gushi instructed the octopus to pack 50 bags of fish feed for each of them as a farewell gift. Overjoyed by the gesture, the chubby beings generously presented their own tokens in return. Though Gushi had anticipated receiving gifts from them, she couldn't help but wonder what they might offer. They proceeded to pluck the spherical orbs from their tentacles, handing them one by one to Gushi. For you, they exclaimed, staring at the orbs they held out. Gushi found herself torn between accepting or declining. Her emotions mirrored the surreal sensation of bidding farewell to a dear friend who, in a bizarre twist, offers their own severed finger as a memento. The gift was profoundly unsettling. Had it been just one, she might have managed, but each of them doing the same filled her with dread. Despite her inner turmoil, Gushi maintained a composed demeanor and inquired, "Does removing this have any effect on you?" "What effect could it have?" They replied, "It's like your fingernail," one said. "Or your hair," added another. These comparisons stemmed from Gushi's earlier lessons to the chubby creatures about human anatomy, where she explained that fingernails and hair grow can be trimmed and cause no harm. Hearing this, Gushi fought the urge to twitch her lips in disbelief. She remained in a state of indecision, thinking to herself, who in the world gives fingernails or hair as gifts? Observing their earnest, expectant faces, Gushi reluctantly had the octopus fetch a basket and placed all the orbs inside. After bidding them farewell, with the little creatures waving back, Gushi sighed as she looked at the basket's contents. "So what use are these things?" she murmured. Although the orbs appeared quite beautiful, the mental association with fingernails and hair made her hesitant to touch them. After much deliberation, she decided to trust the fish-raising system. Since these were gifts that appeared only after achieving extremely high favorability, they must be valuable items. Cautiously, she prodded one orb with her fingertip. It seemed rigid at first glance, but upon contact, a soft, resilient texture transmitted through her finger. Given the Abyssal Scale Tribe's proficiency in ice control, Gushi had expected the orbs to be cold, yet they felt surprisingly warm. What a marvelous species, she whispered to herself, feeling a mix of awe and unease. Once assured that the objects weren't repulsive, she picked one up to examine it closely. Abyssal Pearl, a unique product of the deep-sea Abyssal Scale Tribe, capable of repelling water and maintaining a constant temperature in the ocean. With a soft clatter, Gushi's fingers loosened in astonishment, and the pearl dropped back into the basket. She initially presumed it to be some ordinary material, only to discover it was a water-repelling artifact. Yet, the Abyssal Scale Tribe is truly peculiar, a deep-sea dwelling race that produces pearls capable of repelling water. Who would believe such a tale? Moreover, these pearls appear in abundance and are renewable, making them seem as common as street goods. It's not that Gushi doubts the game system's hints, but at this stage, they often provide only partial understanding, leaving much for her to explore independently. For instance, the game fails to explain how to utilize these pearls. She couldn't possibly hold one in her mouth and venture into the sea. The mere thought sent a shiver down her spine. Placing something like fingernails or hair in her mouth is utterly repulsive. Chapter 200. The use of Abyssal Scale Pearls. Although the game system's guidance is fragmented, she can seek information on the pearl's applications from the Book of Greed. Carrying the basket, Gushi returned indoors, retrieved the auction invitation, and entered the special dimension. Now in a cooperative partnership with the Book of Greed, summoning it has become considerably easier. After calling it forth, she concisely relayed the details about the pearls. The Book of Greed emitted a faint glow, simulating a tone of astonishment. "Oh, you've acquired another treasure, haven't you?" It circled the basket, nearly pressing close enough to lie beside the pearls. Gushi inquired, "Are these items rare?" The Abyssal Scale members I asked claimed they are renewable. The Book of Greed responded, "They are indeed scarce, but of little use to deep-sea races. As you know, pearls in this state primarily serve to repel water, yet what deep-sea dweller requires such a function? However, for land-dwelling humans like yourself, their value is immense." Nodding in agreement, Gushi acknowledged this point, which was precisely why she sought counsel. "So how does one employ them?" The Book of Greed demanded consultation fee. Gushi countered, 10 gold coins, not a penny more. This sum represented her commission from selling the Abyssal Scale garments, a case of taking from the tribe and using it for them. Until she gained more useful insights, she was reluctant to incur losses. Upon stating the price, she sensed a momentary pause from the Book of Greed, detecting an unspoken click of displeasure. Yet, it might have been her imagination, as the book resumed its floating motion and began elaborating. The Book of Greed explained, "These pearls must be in a warm state to exhibit their water-repelling properties. This warmth is only achieved when the Abyssal Scales personally harvest them, a task they seldom undertake. Hence their rarity." Gushi immediately grasped the key point. Warm? So, if the pearls aren't heated, they can't function as water-repellent? The Book of Greed confirmed precisely. When taken from a slain Abyssal Scale, the pearls remain in a chilled state. Given your interactions with them, you must be aware of their strong ice control abilities. Although phrased as a query, the greedy tome did not await Gushi's response before continuing. After the Abyssal Scale Pearl enters its cooled state, it transforms into something akin to an ice pearl, capable of freezing seawater. Gushi remarked, "So, this object is essentially similar to ice crystals?" Ice crystals can also lower the temperature of objects and possess a certain freezing effect. The greedy tome swayed up and down, clearly displeased with Gushi's analogy. "Utterly incomparable," it declared. "Ice crystals are mere inferior goods. The freezing power of the Abyssal Scale Pearl exists on an entirely different plane." Recalling that the pearl she had touched earlier felt warm rather than cold, Gushi pondered thoughtfully. "You mentioned slain earlier. Does that imply that naturally deceased Abyssal Scale beings do not produce pearls with freezing properties?" Precisely, the tome confirmed. Thus, some deep-sea races hunt Abyssal Scale beings to obtain such pearls. Yet, this is a natural phenomenon. With so many deep-sea races, the survival of the fittest is simply the way of existence. Regarding this new world, Gushi found little to say, for even on Mercury, the struggles among different races encompass competition, cooperation, and non-interference. Humans might form a link in the food chain of other creatures, just as other beings could be part of humanity's own chain, all perfectly ordinary occurrences. The sole distinction lay in this world's existence of psychic energy, enabling communication even between predator and prey. However, one must take care not to grow complacent or underestimate adversaries merely because dialogue is possible. In the end, it all boils down to the plight of the unfortunate. What occupies your thoughts? Inquired the greedy tome, noticing Gushi's silence. Shaking her head, Gushi steered the conversation back, replying, "Nothing, just marveling at the wonders of this world. By the way, you haven't explained how to utilize the abyssal scale pearl for water avoidance." "It's quite simple. Psychic energy," the tome stated. "The duration of water avoidance depends on your psychic level." Rubbing her forehead, Gushi realized she had overcomplicated matters. She had forgotten that in this world, infusing psychic energy was often the solution when unsure how to use an item. "You're right," she conceded. Yet, her casual agreement prompted another rebuttal from the greedy tome. "Are you thinking that if you don't know how to use an object, you can simply infuse it with psychic energy?" Pausing her hand on her brow, Gushi asked, "How'd you guess my thoughts? This world is filled with all sorts of fools, and among them are those who share your notion," the tome retorted. "Randomly infusing psychic energy into unknown items could very well mark the beginning of catastrophe. Aren't you just trying to trick me into buying information from you every time I encounter a new item?" Gushi grew increasingly convinced that the greedy tome might indeed resort to such tactics. Without offering any defense, the tome simply replied, "Believe it or not, as you wish." After obtaining the information she sought, Gushi bid farewell to the greedy tome and exited the special space of the invitation letter. As for the final warning, she chose to trust it. Different deep-sea races employed psychic energy in vastly distinct ways. Thus, it was only natural that traps targeting psychic energy existed. Had she not encountered such dangers before? Gushi, basket in hand, gazed up at the sky, clear and cloudless, an ideal moment for a descent into the water. Though the chill was biting, the abyssal scale pearl's ability to repel water and maintain a constant temperature offered a chance to test its basic effects before devising a detailed plan. Summoning the octopus, she gave it instructions, then channeled her spiritual energy into one of the pearls. Just before entering the water, she recalled the game's initial warning: never venture into the depths lightly. Was she doing so now? Every endeavor requires a first attempt. Having addressed the issues of water resistance and temperature regulation, how could she know the outcome without trying? With a splash, Gushi plunged into the sea. The instant she submerged, the abyssal scale pearl in her grasp instantly conjured a waterproof membrane, a spherical shield enveloping her completely. Suspended 2 meters beneath the surface, she could see the shimmering light above through the transparent barrier. Her pet sharks, delighted to see their master in the water, joyfully circled around her. This was an unexpected delight. She had truly succeeded in entering the depths. Yet, despite the pleasant surprise, numerous challenges remained unresolved. Questions such as the membrane's defensive strength, her mobility underwater, pressure tolerance, and duration of action all demanded thorough investigation. Indeed, mastering valuable tools requires time and exploration, so she resolved to begin immediately. A strong premonition told her this ability would soon prove invaluable. Chapter 201. The peculiar boundary with a mere shift in thought. Gushi altered the rhythm of her spiritual energy output. In an instant, the nearly perfect spherical waterproof shield began to undulate, its edges growing unstable as if coated with a shimmering, three-dimensional ripple. This revealed that consistent, steady spiritual energy was essential to prevent the shield from rupturing, a challenging requirement. It confirmed that the abyssal scale pearl was another artifact demanding sustained focus. Though less distracting than active skills, it required greater stability. Imagining the consequences of descending into deeper waters without maintaining this stability, she realized a ruptured shield would spell disaster. To avoid unnecessary complications, she decided to remain in the shallows for now. However, since the waterproof shield required minimal attention, it meant Gushi could simultaneously activate her spiritual defense barrier. With this added protection, her safety underwater significantly improved. Acting on this thought, she enveloped herself in the spiritual defense skill, encasing both her and the waterproof shield, then commanded the octopus to attack with its tentacles. The tentacles slapped against the defense barrier, yet she remained secure within. After testing the defenses, Gushi proceeded to assess mobility and depth. Movement proved straightforward. By adjusting the rhythm of her spiritual energy input, she could alter her trajectory, for instance, increasing the energy flow to descend. Similarly, ascending requires a reduction in mental energy expenditure. When adjusting directional movement, one must ensure a steady output of mental force while maintaining the rotational orientation of the energy entwined around the abyssal scale pearl. After a series of attempts, Gushi found that manipulating the pearl was far from the simplicity described by the greedy tome. Particularly in terms of directional shifts, it proved exceedingly challenging. The slightest miscalculation in angle would lead her astray, unsure of her whereabouts. Repeatedly, she tried to control the direction and speed of the entwined energy, only to collide headfirst into ice blocks. Fortunately, her mental defense shield protected her. Otherwise, severe injuries and bleeding would have been inevitable. Nauseated from the exertion, Gushi knelt within the protective barrier, dry heaving as tears welled in the corners of her eyes, a wave of frustration washing over her. The abyssal scale pearl was indeed a valuable artifact, and though she possessed several, she couldn't simply sell them off. Its control was so arduous that she was certain only a master of the highest caliber could wield it proficiently. Suppressing the persistent urge to vomit, she lifted her head and exhaled deeply, only to find that inhaling became increasingly difficult. The air grew heavy, her chest constricted as if gripped by an invisible hand. Dizziness set in, and her vision wavered between blurriness and clarity. Alas, she lacked the strength to maintain the waterproof barrier and emerge from the water, forcing her to hastily summon the octopus to rescue her. It had never occurred to her that prolonged stay within the barrier could lead to oxygen deprivation. In such a bizarre world, the need to breathe oxygen still persisted. As the octopus lifted her out, Gushi gasped for air in great, desperate breaths. The influx of fresh air into her lungs made the world seem utterly beautiful in that moment. Once she regained her composure, she checked the time. Her recent attempts had kept her submerged for roughly half an hour, merely under normal breathing conditions. In a combat scenario underwater, this duration would undoubtedly shorten significantly. From her current experience, the abyssal scale pearl seemed rather impractical unless she could resolve the issue of underwater respiration. Still, having something to aid in diving was better than nothing at all. With a sigh, she kept one pearl in hand and stored the others away. Returning to her room, Gushi resumed her mental energy training. Over the past couple of days, the presence of the abyssal scale clan on the ship, though delegated to the octopus for hospitality, had cost her valuable time, compelling her to intensify her efforts. Before beginning her exercises, she specifically instructed the fish steering the vessel to halt if they encountered impassable ice layers. As time trickled by, the future ship advanced slowly but persistently across the icy expanse. Nightfall approached, and upon awakening, Gushi consulted the treasure map. She had traveled a considerable distance across the frozen plains, yet the location marked on the map remained elusive. Moreover, the sea around her had transformed entirely into an ice field. Without her fire element cannon to clear the path, entry would have been impossible. Gushi, on the verge of sigh, swallowed it back mid-breath, a wave of frustration washing over her as she tousled her hair in vexation. Lately, everything seemed to conspire against her, and she had sighed so often that she resolved to shake off this gloom. Just as she steadied her spirits, the octopus beside her erupted into frantic chirps, its tentacles slapping against the door with urgency. What could be so pressing? Gushi rose to her feet, scanning her surroundings. No red lights flashed, no signs of attack. Why the octopus's agitation? Puzzled, she made her way to the third floor overlook, only to have her jaw nearly drop in astonishment. The octopus was right. There was cause for alarm. Beyond the ice, 1,000 meters ahead, lay a vast expanse of water. Could it be real? How could a sea be so starkly divided from the ice? Can we cross? Gushi turned quickly to ask the octopus. Chirp, chirp. No. She clicked her tongue in frustration. If they couldn't proceed now, even the fire element cannon couldn't breach the ice a kilometer away. This was truly exaggerated. She knew the cannon's power better than anyone, yet the ice ahead defied it. Clearly, this was no ordinary ice field. Chirp. Indeed, such a peculiar place was not to be overlooked. Though dusk was settling, a brief exploration of the ice field ahead seemed manageable. She had already swept the area with her psychic senses and detected no dangerous creatures, and with the crimson gaze not activating, most risks were eliminated. Instructing the octopus to guard the ship, Gushi maneuvered the spikes forward, standing atop them as she expanded her psychic scan, only to find the ice field utterly barren. Admittedly, the situation was growing increasingly bizarre. With a skeptical mind, she swiftly traversed the ice field to observe the boundary between water and ice. The cross-section of the thick ice was remarkably smooth, as if cleanly severed upon meeting the water. Circling the edge for over 10 minutes, she noted that every junction was identical. This endless body of water resembled a colossal, artificially crafted basin. Wait, a basin? The realization struck Gushi like a bolt. If it were a basin, there must be differences within the water itself. She hadn't sensed any rise in temperature, yet it remained unfrozen. Could the water itself be the issue? The possibility sent a shiver of caution through her. It was best not to tamper with the unknown. Opening her interface, she purchased a random water container from the trading zone and carefully scooped a ladle from the unfrozen sea before her. The unfrozen water settled swiftly in the container, and soon she witnessed the inner edges of the vessel beginning to crystallize into ice at a visible pace. Within half a minute, the boundary between the container and the water transformed into a smooth, icy wall, nearly identical to the one she had observed earlier. Unconsciously, she swallowed a gulp of air, feeling a wave of relief that she had refrained from recklessly touching this peculiar liquid. Having examined all that was visible to the naked eye, she resolved to investigate the nature of this anomalous water further. With the aid of game prompts, Gushi quickly uncovered its basic properties. Eternal sea dew, a water source for nurturing certain creatures, though the vast majority of marine life cannot endure prolonged exposure to it. Interpreting the game's description, she deduced that brief contact might be permissible, as it only cautioned against long-term immersion. Rather than touching the water directly, she cautiously dipped just the tip of her finger into the eternal sea dew. The moment her fingertip met the surface, a wave of warmth surged through her, startling her into an instinctive recoil. After regaining her composure, she extended her palm, holding it 5 centimeters above the water. If the liquid were indeed warm, she expected to feel some heat at that distance. Yet to her disappointment, not a trace of warmth reached her skin. Skeptical, she submerged her entire hand into the water, and the sensation of warmth returned, more pronounced this time due to the increased contact area. How bizarre, she thought. Immersed, it felt warm, yet when contained, it froze solid. To verify this enigma, Gushi ventured to the trading area and procured several different containers, repeating the experiment. Each time, the same phenomenon occurred. Ice walls formed rapidly at the interface between the sea dew and the container, with their thickness correlating to the volume of liquid held. The more dew, the thicker the ice. Gushi scrutinized the icy barriers, attempting to breach them with a sharp spike, only to find them impenetrable, defending perfectly against her assault. Now it all became clear. This vast, kilometer-spanning ice plain was the result of the eternal sea dew. Consequently, fish would be wise to avoid these waters, and ships certainly could not pass through, lest they risk becoming encased in thick layers of ice, leading to dire complications. With the mystery unraveled, Gushi turned and flew back to her ship. As dusk had fallen, she decided to postpone further plans until the morrow. She had discovered this aquatic anomaly late in the day, and perhaps by morning a hidden treasure site might emerge from its depths. Sumatimas ite sums. Wishes do come true. Just last night, she had mused that the eternal sea dew might conceal a treasure trove, and upon waking at dawn, she beheld a distant treasure site materializing on the horizon. That must be an island, without a doubt. Gushi gazed ahead with unwavering certainty. Indeed, the octopus stood beside her, also peering forward. For a few seconds, they exchanged glances. So you're still standing here. Hurry and prepare the meal. I must head to the island. It had been ages since she last encountered land, and now, not only was there an island, but it lay in the direction of the treasure trove. What else could it be but riches? She couldn't possibly let this opportunity slip away. The octopus glanced nervously at Gushi, then propelled itself backward with a springy leap, darting off to the kitchen to whip up breakfast. On previous island visits, the vessel could always dock directly by the shore. This time, however, the situation differed. The ship couldn't approach the island, nor could it even enter the waters ahead. Now, everything depended solely on her. Standing on the deck, Gushi observed the distant island, its outline barely visible. Though the weather was fair, her boat seemed far from the land. After breakfast, She briefed the fish companions and prepared to set off for the island. Uncertain of the exact distance to the isle, she needed to conserve her psychic energy as much as possible. Thus, she positioned herself atop the octopus's head, instructing it to carry her to the edge of the eternal warm sea. Bidding farewell to the octopus, she extended her psychic senses in an attempt to probe the island's vicinity, but to no avail. With her current methods failing to reveal the island's secrets, she had no choice but to take a risk despite the unclear path ahead. Thinking of the full stock of psychic restoration potions in her backpack, she felt a sense of reassurance. Utilizing her object manipulation ability, she stepped onto sharp spikes and soared swiftly toward the island. As she flew, she wasn't idle. She scanned her surroundings intently. Having covered a considerable distance, she noted the eternal warm sea's waters were eerily still, devoid of any life. No swimming fish below, no seabirds above. A truly barren expanse. Half an hour into her flight, she wondered why she hadn't arrived yet. Though the distance to the island was diminishing, it felt excessively long. If not for her B-level psychic strength, the energy drain would have been unbearable. Oh, how she wished to glance back and gauge how far she'd come. Lost in her musings, a sudden, haughty squawk broke the silence as an ice-blue bird flapped past her. Its proud wings beat with an air of superiority, its beady eyes gleaming with mockery, as if it were the wisest and most noble creature in the universe. A flock of metaphorical black crows seemed to cross Gushi's mind. How had she sunk to being ridiculed by a mere bird? Such insolence. Yet, she had to admit, the bird's speed was impressive, nearly matching her own. Though audacious, it possessed some redeeming qualities. Unconsciously, she nodded in acknowledgement. After all, she couldn't be too harsh on a passing avian. Expecting a friendly greeting from it was out of the question. Watching the bird glide past, Gushi withdrew her gaze. Yet this audacious creature, circling with wings spread wide, looped back and flew by her once more, emitting two more raucous caws. This time, she distinctly sensed an escalation in the mockery within those calls. If the first caw had been a level 4 in derision, the second reached a 6. For reference, she defined the maximum as 10. Was this bird deliberately provoking animosity? Gushi shot at a glare, waged an internal battle, and ultimately reclaimed her composure, letting her eyes drift away. After all, she was an adult. It was beneath her to engage in a feud with a foolish bird. Since the silly creature wasn't attacking, it must merely be passing by, so she would magnanimously let it go. However, some birds simply refused to accept grace. The dim-witted avian, noticing the human lacked wings and ignored it, resumed its circular flight, repeating the mocking caws. But mockery that fails to provoke is no mockery at all. As long as Gushi disregarded it, the bird was nothing but air. She needed to hasten to the island without delay, with no time for such nonsense. Chapter 203. Crystal Island. Unacknowledged by Gushi, the bird tilted its head, observing her briefly before spiraling upward on its own. Gushi assumed the bird had deemed her uninteresting and flown off, but she soon realized her naivety. Freed from the bird's pestering, she accelerated her flight toward the island. Suddenly, a shadow enveloped her from above. In such weather, it was impossible for a passing cloud to block the light so abruptly. This unnatural occurrence demanded her heightened attention. Just as she grew puzzled and prepared to look up to uncover the truth, a cascade of peculiar ice-blue leaves and fruits rained down from above. Mixed with debris, the frosty foliage and fruits showered directly onto Gushi's head, sending a chill through her. This position had always been her vantage point for striking others mid-air. She had never been attacked from above while airborne. It seemed she would need to practice defending from this angle in the future. As the debris assailed her, Gushi instinctively shut her eyes, dodging sideways with her spikes raised, yet some fragments still managed to annoy her. Ugh! Tui! She spat out the bits that had strayed in her mouth, immediately followed by a series of cackling caws. Those still caws. The tone had unmistakably shifted from mockery to outright ridicule. Closing her eyes, Gushi rolled them in exasperation before snapping them open wide. Initially, she had considered turning a blind eye, but since closing them proved ineffective, it was clear she must face the situation head-on. This wretched, foul bird dared to challenge her. Seizing the moment during its cackles, Gushi launched a psychic assault, delivering a swift punishment that sent the bird tumbling into the water with a splash. Without a backward glance, she pressed onward. As for that bird, if it perished, so be it. If it survived, consider it fortunate. After gathering her composure, Gushi flew for another dozen minutes before finally reaching her destination. The moment she set foot on the island, her vision was flooded with an icy blue hue. Not only were the flowers, grass, and trees all tinted in this glacial shade, but even the soil beneath her feet consisted of crystalline ice in the same color. Oh dear, her eyes! She had heard tales of black being vividly multicolored, but now she witnessed blue in all its dazzling variety. This island was on the verge of giving her a genuine case of cynophobia. She resolved to quickly search for something to cleanse her vision. Surrounded entirely by the pervasive ice blue, Gushi found it impossible to discern direction. Fortunately, the terrain offered slight variations. Directly ahead lay a dense forest, while to her left and right stretched sandy shores. After a brief hesitation, she opted to venture into the woods, as the beach's blue crystals, gleaming under the sunlight, were too blinding. Prolonged exposure might bring tears to her eyes. But before proceeding, she knew she must leave markers. Otherwise, she risked losing her way back. Reflecting further, she wondered if she should have placed signs along the shore upon arrival, having trudged forward without a single glance behind. Turning to gaze at the icy coastline, she saw it as a uniform line in the distance. Her heart plummeted like a heavy weight crashing to the ground. Ah, survival in this world truly demands experience. As a first-timer on such an island, she realized she ought to have planned more thoroughly. With the situation as it stood, her only recourse was to assess her surroundings and make amends. Gushi first opened her fish-rearing system and, relieved to find all her aquatic companions in normal condition, felt a wave of reassurance. These fish served not merely as laborers. In scenarios like this, they could act as fixed coordinates for navigation. Moreover, she could communicate with them, summoning their aid for guidance or retrieval. Assured that the fish system was intact, her immediate task was to record her current location. Eyeing the crystalline trees, a long-dormant urge to chop would resurface. She drew out her long-unused axe and began hacking away with vigor. Yet, just as the progress bar hit 100, the massive tree disintegrated into fine dust, leaving not a trace behind. Calmly retracting her axe, Gushi now regarded the entire forest with particular disdain. However, the leaves seemed oddly familiar. Leaping up slightly, she plucked a handful, and a chill seeped from her palm straight to her heart. Spreading her hand open, she exclaimed inwardly, "No wonder these leaves look familiar. They're the very same debris that foolish birds showered upon me earlier." Unpleasant memories surged back in an instant. Forcing them aside and suppressing her revulsion, she decided not to squander effort here. The most pressing matter was to take immediate action. The morning's encounter was far from pleasant. Yet she recalled that pile of debris, which aside from leaves, contained a peculiar fruit. This fruit fell more swiftly than the leaves and in greater abundance, making it difficult for her to discern clearly. However, based on the current clues, it was highly probable that such fruit was produced by this type of tree. Gushi wandered through the forest, her eyes scanning the surroundings intently. After a deliberate search, she finally discovered a tree bearing the fruit. The fruits on the tree were rather small, but identical to the one that had struck her. Gushi leaped up, using the trunk for leverage, lightly stepping on a few branches, and successfully plucked a fruit to examine. Frostberry, edible, product of the frost tree, beloved by ice-wing birds. It appeared unremarkable, but since it was edible, Gushi wiped it twice and brought it to her mouth. The fruit crunched crisply, lacking any distinct flavor or moisture, making the claim of edibility somewhat dubious. After swallowing it, a familiar chill spread through her, and as she lowered her head to discard the fruit, she noticed a layer of frost forming on her hand. Slightly startled, she quickly opened her character panel and found she had acquired a status effect, a peculiar one at that, as a single frostberry had bestowed both a buff and a debuff simultaneously. The buff granted resistance to cold, while the debuff imposed a freezing slowdown lasting 10 minutes. Gushi muttered to herself, "What kind of absurdity is this? Harming the enemy at the cost of self-injury. Truly something only a foolish bird would consume." With her special attire, the cold resistance was trivial, but the freezing slowdown would linger for 10 minutes. Gushi looked up thoughtfully at the fruits on the tree. Although they held no particular benefit for humans, they were irresistible to ice-wing birds. Focusing on key details, she decisively climbed the tree without hesitation. The small size and scarcity of the fruits were minor issues. What mattered was whether she could claim them. With this in mind, she glanced around at the surrounding trees, a captivating smile gracing her lips. Chapter 204. The cave Gushi glanced back at the frostberry's effects. The debuff still had 2 minutes left to dissipate. But such a minor hindrance did not impede her current actions. A wave of psychic energy emanated from her, instantly enveloping the nearby woods. Since arriving on the island, her eyes have been assaulted by a dazzling array of blues, causing significant strain. Continuing to rely on her vision for searching felt worse than death. With her psychic senses unleashed, she quickly detected the boundaries of the frost trees. Concentrating her mental power, Gushi sensed the locations of the fruits in the area. Despite her earlier search leading her to expect few frost trees bearing fruit in the forest, she hadn't anticipated such scarcity. Having scoured the entire grove, she found only a handful of trees that had produced any fruit, originally scarce in value. Yet since the ice crystal fruit held no use for her, even this ironclad principle became meaningless. The only advantage of the fruit's rarity was perhaps the ease of collection. After pinpointing the exact locations of the ice crystal trees bearing the fruit, Gushi withdrew her spiritual energy and dashed toward them, stepping on sharp thorns. In roughly half an hour, she had plundered all the ice crystal fruits she had previously located. Throughout this process, though she did not encounter any other ice crystal birds, she was convinced that many must inhabit the vicinity. Gushi continued forward, soon emerging from the ice crystal forest into a grassy plain. Lowering her gaze, she found the ground covered entirely in icy blue grass, whose dazzling hues incessantly assaulted her visual senses, inducing profound dizziness. She became utterly certain that she had developed chromophobia for the color blue. Could there not be any other shades? Gushi shut her eyes in agony, finally grasping how physical suffering pales in comparison to mental torment, an invisible, inescapable affliction. Even with her eyes closed, myriad shades of blue haunted her mind. Perhaps she should set this meadow ablaze. In her current state, even the ashen gray of charred earth seemed preferable to the overwhelming icy blue. Yet, as a native of Mercury, she knew well the taboo of igniting wildfires. Should she commit such an unethical act? Reopening her eyes, the sudden onslaught of blue overwhelmed her once more. Hastily, she lifted her gaze to the sky, where a few white clouds drifted, yet the overarching azure remained unyielding. Summoning several sharp thorns, she directed them to strike the ground in unison. A thunderous crash followed, and only then did she comprehend her actions. The flora on this island differed from others. Though they bloomed and fruited, their texture, both to touch and sight, resembled crystalline ice. Under the assault of the thorns, the grassy expanse shattered instantly, the impact scattering fragments in all directions. Realizing the consequences, Gushi swiftly enveloped herself in a protective barrier. As her skill activated, shards clattered against the shield before falling to the ground, while unhindered pieces ricocheted into the forest, leaving visible marks on the ice crystal trees. Once the fragments ceased their flight, Gushi lowered her instinctively defensive hands. She had acted impulsively, driven to the brink by the relentless blue. Color theory suggests that blue evokes melancholy, and overexposure dampens the spirit. Surely, that explained it. Thus, she rationalized her outburst as a means to dispel gloom. With this justification in mind, she refocused. Though she had contemplated burning the meadow, the thorn-induced devastation achieved a similar effect. After the recent destruction by the spikes, the ground was now littered with scattered blue ice fragments, and the once lush grassland had turned barren. Holding the spike, she cautiously leaped across the shattered ice blocks. Beyond this meadow lay the crystalline ice forest, where she intended to gather ice fruits. As Gushi hopped from one ice chunk to another, her eyes caught a stark black hole amidst the broken ice, its contrasting hue immediately capturing her attention. Without a second thought, she halted. The pitch-black cavity seemed to beckon. She let out a soft call into it, and after a prolonged silence, a faint echo barely returned. This hole must be incredibly deep, Gushi mused, nodding thoughtfully to herself. The surrounding stillness compelled her to peer more intently into the opening. Could this be akin to Alice's rabbit hole adventure? Filling voids is an innate human impulse, much like the compulsion in Tetris to complete every gap. This cavity now drew her in irresistibly. She recalled a previous discovery of a similar hole, which led her to a grim collection of skeletal remains. Fortunately, she later encountered sea spirits who took on the burden. Though those bones ultimately found purpose, the experience had left her with a lingering unease, a shudder that still haunted her memories. Yet, when opportunity presents itself so blatantly, letting it slip away feels like a profound disrespect. The decision to enter wasn't even a question in her mind. Gushi leaned forward, casting a quick glance into the abyss before plunging in without hesitation. Her body descended continuously, unlike the step path of her last cave. This one was a sheer vertical drop. Had she not shattered the grassland earlier, she might have stumbled into it unwittingly. With arms crossed, she allowed herself to fall freely, relying on a slight release of mental energy to probe the bottom. She planned to levitate just before impact to land safely. A minute passed, and still no bottom in sight. Could this truly be like Alice's rabbit hole? She wondered, though aware of its depth. She hadn't anticipated such an extent. How long had she been in free fall, yet remained airborne? This couldn't be a natural formation. It must be a crafted space of some sort. Gushi folded her arms, tapping her fingers rhythmically against them. Patience was a virtue she possessed in abundance. If waiting was required, so be it. But this wasn't idle time. She mentally noted the duration of her descent. 3 minutes later, the entrance above had faded into obscurity, yet she continued to fall. Hesitating briefly, she resolved not to endure an endless drop. She prepared to ascend, using the spike to reach the sunlight once more. Just then, as if playing a trick on her, the cave that had seemed bottomless suddenly offered a grand surprise the moment she decided to abandon the descent. The moment her foot met the sharp spikes, the fringes of her mental energy unexpectedly brushed against the cavern's floor. Thus, in the unpredictable tapestry of fate, she abandoned her plan to return to the surface and instead pivoted, continuing her descent along the treacherous spikes toward the abyss. Almost there, sensing the bottom, Gushi accelerated her plunge. With merely a meter left, she leaped from the spikes, which traced a graceful arc through the air before seamlessly returning to her grasp. Although she had reached the depths, an impenetrable darkness enveloped everything, and an eerie silence reigned, devoid of any sound. Thump, 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 thump. The only rhythm she could perceive was the steady beat of her own heart, resonating from her chest through her body to her eardrums. The torment of the mind far surpassed any physical agony, while she could endure the ravages of rigorous training. The overwhelming visual stimulus of endless blue and the intangible trial of absolute silence inflicted a dual assault on her psyche, proving unbearably cruel. For her, merely standing still in that place was an ordeal. In the absence of sound, she resolved to create her own. Deliberately generating noise, Gushi did not linger. She decisively lifted her feet and pressed onward. The cadence of her footsteps finally introduced a new melody to the deathly quiet, and even its monotonous repetition sounded exquisitely beautiful to her ears in that moment. Chapter 205. Temporary abandonment. The unknown is terrifying, yet simultaneously alluring. Some individuals retreat in the face of the unknown, an act that, in a way, can be seen as reverence. Others, however, choose to confront and explore it, a testament to fearlessness. Reverence and fearlessness form a wondrous pair, a belief we must all hold dear, adapting our choices to the circumstances for optimal decisions. In this new world and unfamiliar abode, humanity is granted little choice. Here, pioneers require fearlessness. Any reverence for the world might have already claimed your life, leaving you as prey to the denizens of the deep sea. Fearful? Undoubtedly so. Even Gushi, after half an hour of trudging through the oppressive silence and darkness, could not pretend to possess an unyielding will or a heart untouched by turmoil. She is human, not some legendary hero forged in myth. Environment shapes individuals. None are invincible from the start. Her heart thumped steadily and powerfully. Though the sound of her footsteps dispelled the silence, it failed to kindle hope within her. Her mental energy served as a substitute for sight, alleviating some of her unease. Yet after a considerable journey, she had not encountered her next objective. Amidst the intertwining threads of anxiety and restlessness, she needed something to sustain her resolve. Thus, she decisively activated the luminous screen. In an instant, its gentle radiance flooded the darkness, causing the shadows to recede and replacing the chill with a comforting warmth. Amidst this hazy ambience, a touch of novelty was needed, so Gushi resumed humming her peculiar melody. She was acutely aware that her actions might invite peril, yet she reasoned that failing to escape her current predicament would only lead to greater danger. After trudging for another 10 minutes or so, she finally halted. At last, the end was in sight. This surge of joy and exhilaration was no ordinary delight akin to finding a hidden village after a winding path. It resembled the profound elation of discovering a guiding lighthouse that illuminated her entire existence. She could sense an enormous gate looming ahead. Though she could only perceive it through her spiritual senses, she discerned its towering height of over 10 meters, adorned with bizarre runes and massive chains. Typically, such structures guarded either a treasure trove or a sealed entity, though she wasn't certain if the concept of sealing existed in this world. Regardless, the crucial question was how to gain entry. The gate appeared impenetrably thick, embellished with strange ornaments that clearly defied any attempt at forceful breach. Gushi clung to the belief that solutions outnumber obstacles. After a brief contemplation, she retrieved a pickaxe from her backpack and began excavating the ground. If the surface offered no passage, she would tunnel beneath. Surely, the underground held a way in. She raised the tool and struck downward with force, a clang echoing as sparks flew from the impact. Yet, while solutions may abound, some prove misguided. For instance now, as Gushi stared at the mining pick in her hands, witnessing its shattered remains on the verge of being reclaimed by the system, she realized this was one such error. With just a gentle swing, the pickaxe had inexplicably disintegrated. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and amidst her shock, she silently offered a farewell prayer for the tool's demise. Immediately, a game notification chimed in. Game alert. Special area. Destruction or mining prohibited. Although she had anticipated challenges in ground excavation when she drew the pickaxe, she never imagined it would be outright impossible. What could this be? The foundation of the island itself? Impossible. If personal ship bases could be damaged, surely the seabed's bedrock should be vulnerable too. After a fruitless pondering, Gushi abandoned the thought. Not every mystery demands resolution. Sometimes, rules are simply rules, and knowing their existence suffices. Shifting her focus, she stepped closer to the gate and scrutinized it intently with her spiritual senses. While the exterior was clear as day, the interior remained an enigma. It seems this gate blocks spiritual perception, she murmured softly. Drawing from her experience in this world, anything involving spiritual energy warranted caution. The gate and its surrounding walls were best left untouched. Blocking spiritual senses was a minor concern compared to the potential hazard of absorption. Gushi halted her steps a meter away from the colossal gate, then proceeded to purchase paper and a pen from the trading area to meticulously sketch the details she had discerned through her spiritual senses. After spending some time completing her records, she nodded with satisfaction at the masterpiece in her hands. Despite her usual indolence, her artistic skills were quite commendable. Through this recent sketching, Gushi had gained a more intricate understanding of the gate. Apart from various runes and massive chains, there was a minuscule keyhole positioned approximately 10 meters high on the door. She cast a fleeting glance toward the keyhole's location, stowed her drawings, and began ascending using the spikes as footholds. Although her spiritual perception could reveal many things, this form of observation differed from visual sight in its connection to the mind, prompting her to personally inspect it. Arriving before the keyhole, she scrutinized the surrounding area closely. The runes around the keyhole differed slightly from those elsewhere. To her, they were as cryptic as ancient scriptures, yet by comparison, she noticed additional patterns, or, more aptly, characters encircling the keyhole, faithfully reproducing the original appearance of the keyhole's vicinity. She marked it prominently on her diagram to remind herself to pay extra attention. With the final stroke completed, she tucked the drawing away, her earlier trepidation now entirely dispelled, and the shadows that had clouded her mind were cast into oblivion. Having preliminarily gathered information on the giant gate, and with no immediate means to enter, she resolved to seek clues elsewhere on the island. Taking a few steps back, she dashed toward the cave entrance, relying on memory, and with her spiritual senses fully unleashed. She fled the area at top speed. Now, unlike her initial entry, she had a clear objective, infusing her actions with renewed vigor. Minutes later, Gushi burst forth from the dark cave like a firework in the night sky, piercing through the boundary between light and darkness. In that moment of breakthrough, she found the blue hues of the world beautiful once more. Upon landing, she surveyed her surroundings, mentally noting the location before heading toward the crystalline ice forest. Giant Gate. Wait for me. Chapter 206. Plucking the bird. Ice crystal birds not only feed on ice crystal fruits, but also nest within ice crystal trees. which produced these fruits as their primary sustenance. With foresight, Gushi had gathered all the ice crystal fruits into her possession, a move that would prove fatal for the birds. Unaware of this consequence, or perhaps indifferent even if she knew, she proceeded to strip the trees of their bounty. After traversing a small patch of the ice crystal forest, she arrived at another grove, distinguished by its inhabitants, the ice crystal birds. Truthfully, the sight of these birds did not surprise her, as they harmonized perfectly with the environment. At that moment, the ice crystal birds she discovered were lined up in a row on a tree branch, tilting their heads in unison to observe her approach from a distance. This spectacle resembled an enlarged version of sparrows perched upon power lines, yet with a distinct difference. These foolish birds showed no fear of humans, instead gazing at the unfamiliar creature with a sense of curiosity. Their cacophony of caws echoed like a roll call, continuing in a rhythmic pattern until the fifth iteration abruptly ceased, though their numbers were few enough for her to count at a glance. The unnecessary vocal tally seemed almost absurd. The sheer foolishness of their demeanor managed to extinguish the flames of anger within her, leaving her feeling deflated like a punctured balloon. She realized that directing her fury at these birds would only make her the true fool. So this is where the foolish birds reside, she mused, a faint, ambiguous smile playing on Gushi's lips as she observed the crystalline avians. She acknowledged her own vindictive nature, having not forgotten the morning's vehicular mishap. In her eyes, these ice-feathered creatures appeared as endearing beasts, far more diminutive and charming than the monstrous denizens of the deep sea. Yet this perception was tinted by a heavy filter of bias, for their collective presence cast a shadow so dense it blotted out the sunlight above, leaving not a sliver of illumination. Only upon witnessing the sprawling darkness beneath their forms did she concede that these birds were anything but small. Her gaze drifted downward to the sturdy, ancient boughs of the frost-laden trees, which seemed even more primordial than the forest she had previously traversed. They had aged sufficiently to bear the weight of these colossal birds, a testament to the arduous growth required to achieve such resilience. As Gushi and the birds engaged in a silent standoff, their incessant cawing persisted, a deafening chorus akin to hundreds of ducks. The noise, however, was a welcome reprieve from the oppressive silence she had endured. Since the foolish birds showed no intent to attack, she saw no reason to provoke them, preferring to dedicate her time to seeking clues for an exit. After casting a final, almost ceremonious glance their way, Gushi turned and strode off, considering it a polite farewell. To her surprise, this gesture piqued the birds' interest. They descended from the branches in a chaotic flurry, like dumplings dropping into a pot, and began trailing closely behind her. She had witnessed ducklings following their mother, but never such large birds shadowing a human. What could this mean? Did they aspire to be her underlings? The absurdity of the situation overwhelmed her, leaving no time to vocalize all her thoughts. So she quickened her pace in an attempt to shake off these idle followers. Alas, her efforts proved futile. Wherever she headed east, the birds steadfastly refused to venture west. Exasperated beyond tolerance, she spun around abruptly and roared at them. "If you continue to follow me, I'll take all your fruits." The sudden halt and fierce declaration startled the birds, none anticipating such an abrupt stop from this novel being. The unexpected command caused a chain reaction. The first bird halted, the second collided, and a domino effect ensued, culminating in the lead bird being crushed to the ground under the momentum of the others. The sheer idiocy of the scene left she momentarily stunned, unable to process the absurdity unfolding before her. Only when she witnessed the foolish birds rolling away one by one, leaving the bottommost one straining desperately to wrench its neck from the earth, did she snap back to reality. Gushi was utterly dumbfounded by the scene before her. Just how stubborn was this bird's head to be pinned so firmly to the ground? Watching it struggle in vain to free itself, she found herself inexplicably crouching down and asking, "Would you like a hand?" Quack, 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 quack. The trapped bird remained motionless, but the others, having rolled aside, quacked merrily in response. Perhaps they were consenting to her assistance? With a resigned sigh, Gushi set down the sharp spike she held and placed her hands upon the crystalline bird, finding a stable position to exert force. Before pulling, she inquired gently, "I'm going to tug now." Quack, 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 quack. The silly birds gathered around, rhythmically flapping their wings like a spirited cheer squad, urging her on. At times, Their sheer foolishness left her a loss for how to react, so she could only repeatedly reassure herself that they were, indeed, a flock of simple-minded creatures. Taking a deep breath, Gushi applied all her strength, pulling at the bird's neck as if uprooting a stubborn radish. Yet, whether due to the bird being too deeply embedded or compressed, her efforts proved futile, failing to dislodge it. What manner of bird was this? To become so firmly entrenched with a single press? Her face flushed with exertion, Gushi strained once more, only to meet with failure again. Reluctantly, she released her grip, wiping imaginary sweat from her brow in the bird's presence and letting out a wistful sigh. I can't manage this alone. All of you must lend a hand. Her tone carried an undeniable authority, reminiscent of a battlefield commander. She hadn't missed how, during her struggle, these birds had done nothing but quack. Clearly, it was their blunder. So why should she bear the burden? Wasn't that a mistake? Quack, 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 quack. Fortunately, the simpletons seemed to grasp her meaning, promptly hopping into a neat line behind her, awaiting orders. Pleased with their compliance, Gushi addressed the grounded bird once more, and you, when we exert force, push with your feet against the ground. Don't leave all the work to us. No sooner had she spoken than the bird lifted a foot, tracing a circle in the air, a gesture she interpreted as agreement. Rolling up her sleeves and gazing skyward, Gushi pondered how she had ended up in such an absurd situation. Quack, Oldai, no rusing. She turned and bestowed a kind word upon the second bird in line. You, use your wings to pull me. I'll give the command, and we'll all pull together. If you understand, quack once, if not, quack twice. Quack. Each bird emitted a single quack, suggesting they had comprehended. Once again, Gushi seized the plump body of the earthbound bird. During the previous attempt at pulling, the excessive smoothness of the feathers caused her hands to slip frequently, necessitating a reverse grip this time. Thus, she first smoothed the bird's plumage, then executed an inverted grasp, causing the ice crystal bird's feathers to bloom like flowers in an instant. Observing this, the other birds instinctively shuddered. Unconcerned with their reactions, Gushi shouted loudly, "All right, get ready." The birds jolted into action, swiftly aligning their wings one after another on the person or bird